This is Kings and Conquerors, an Age of Empires 2 podcast by Mumm and Pennenbuisje.
Welcome everybody to the Kings and Conquerors Age of Empires 2 podcast, a podcast where you listeners are the kings and we conquer different topics. I am Pennenbuisje.
And I'm Cursed.
First of all, we want to wish you all a happy new year. In 2022, we decided we wanted to start our own Age of Empires 2 podcast, and we have done some trial episodes for which we've received a lot of responses. We are very thankful for all the people who have already tuned in to what we've made so far and who've given us their feedback. But now, for 2023, we have finalized our project, and this is our first proper episode.
Indeed, listeners, our show will have 3 different segments. We're going to start you off with the notable news, where we will summarize the latest developments in the Age of Empires community. Then we'll follow it up with the talk of the show. This episode focuses on new players, how you can get better at this game that we all love. And finally, we'll end with the Civ of the Month, which is the Franks. So stay tuned.
Baguette.
Camembert.
Notable news.
This is Notable News, the first segment of our show. In this segment, we will discuss the current affairs in the Age of Empires 2 community. We have selected a list of topics of all the latest, and we will discuss our opinions relating to these topics.
Pen, can you tell us, what are we going to be discussing this time? What happened in December?
2022 ended with a banger, in my opinion. A great tournament, a new patch, a lot of things coming up. First of all, maybe we can focus on the patch which we've had in December now.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, it's a holiday event, so we have new, avatars, or like the profile icons. They did some fixes. Main fix, in my opinion, is that Shrivamsha riders cannot tank splash damage anymore, like from mangonel shots or something. It was a bug. They tanked damage, so other units didn't get hit. That's away now.
Interesting. I didn't know that was a thing.
I'm not sure if it was really abused, this bug. And other bugs are just like, typical stuff. What is more important is that they overhauled the cavalry archer unit upgrades. Mainly, they've made some switches where the heavy CA upgrade now has a better anti-pike damage, and the anti-pike damage from party and tactics is now a bit nerfed, but it applies to all mounted archers. So to CA itself, if you have full upgrades, it won't make that much of a difference, but it's mainly a difference for other units that can benefit from party and tactics. And with that in mind, now the Arambai is benefited from the party and tactic upgrades.
My God, this makes me think of, you going through every Civ, seeing which one has the heavy cav but not the Parthian, and oh my God, someone out there probably did this, like thinking through this. But to me, it's kind of interesting because Arambai are cool.
Mm-hmm.
They used to be too strong and kind of annoying when they one-shot TCs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think it's good that they get a bonus against infantry like that. I do think that, I don't know if we'll get to it afterwards, but Hera really showed that the Burmese are underrated. And I've also felt that way.
Mm-hmm.
When you play Burmese, it's somehow you can do some things you didn't know you could,
They have a lot of things going for them, like the free wood and the relics you have immediately. Those are nice things, but they're not the most. Their game plan isn't really the most go-to, I feel. And the Arambai, because of their accuracy being so low, maybe this will make them better. But then again, I think if you fight pikes with Arambai, you need to run away and kite anyway. So this bonus damage, I don't know what it does.
It's only in Imperial Age anyway, and Imperial Age Ambai are often not the best, let's say, strategy. But we'll see. Maybe this changes it.
What might be different is like a civ that has CA and heavy CA but didn't have Pardian, or like for those civs, those are all small differences that won't make a big meta shift, but it can like make a very small difference. And speaking of small differences, the cost of the battle elephant has been reduced. You know those expensive units?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they used to cost 120 food and 70 gold. Well, they still cost 70 food.
No, 70 gold.
Yeah, but now you can get them for $1. Their new cost is 110 food, so that's 10 food less. Wow.
A big meta shift, right? This is going to completely change the game.
Yeah, they're completely trash now. Like trash in the way that you can spam them infinitely. No, it's less than 10% food reduction.
But the real question is, does this nerf or buff the melee 33% cheaper battle elephants?
Technically, it's still a buff because it's even cheaper for them, or it's still cheaper for them. It's just in comparison to the other elephants, well, I think percentage-wise, it would have been more.
Yeah,
before.
because
no, it's the same percentage. It's exactly the same percentage.
No, because look, they got a reduction on a bigger cost.
Yeah, but it's a percentage reduction, so it will always be the same, right?
Wait. Let me think about this. Like, you get half off €1,000 television.
Yeah.
That saves you €500.
Yeah.
Right? If I then say, actually now it's €900.
Yeah.
Right? That means that now you save $450.
Yeah. But that would apply if it's about a television, because you just buy one. If it's about military units, you will always spend the same amount, I feel. It will just be different units you have on the field, and it will still have the same percentage more. Do you know what I mean?
No, because before, if the guy next to you buys a TV for 1,000, you bought it for 900, you know, the 10%, you were saving €100. But now the TV is 500, so you pay 450. So actually you're saving €50. So you know what I mean? Like, so in a way it's less good to have a discount.
I understand what you mean. But I think if you look at it like, if you make 100 elephants, the melee will have made, let's say, 120, and that will always stay the same, right? If it's 20%, I don't know what the exact percentage is, but you're definitely right that it's less of a deal per elephant. That's true.
I mean, wait, your comparison is really putting the elephant meta central, no? So if I go 100 elephants, you go 120 elephants. What a big advantage. I was comparing it to the other units in the game, not necessarily only elephant v elephant.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right. And the melee elephants, they never were the strongest. I think the main thing about their power spike is that they can get to them quite early or surprise you, like mid-castle age. Suddenly they can have a few elephants on the field. And now it's easier for them to get to, but it never was their main unit composition, I feel. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm mainly surprised that we managed to talk this much about a 10 food reduction in the unit.
Yeah. There's a lot of notable news, so maybe we should move on.
We should move on, yes.
Yeah. So next up is another very interesting unit that is quite situational, and it's a slinger. Now they are affected by Thumb Ring. So that's only 2 Incas. Yeah. Yeah,
that's not going to do anything. I don't think.
They will fire faster and they'll have more accuracy, but I think slingers, they had high accuracy, right? The slingers?
I have no idea. But to me, the slingers are this kind of unit that doesn't do much, because you build the slingers, you counter the infantry, but then your opponent just adds anything else, even a light cav, and your slingers do no damage. Like, they literally do no damage to anything but infantry. So, hand cannoneers are good against infantry, but if a knight charges a group of hand cannoneers, it gets shot to pieces. if a knight charges a group of slingers, it's like it slaps away the mosquitoes, like they won't even dent his armor.
It's only one civ that can make them. It's a civ without cav, so normally people don't go helps against them. The only way they would need to count infantry is either a unique unit or a champion, which is also situational. So I'm not so sure if the slingers aren't that good, or if there's just so few situations in which they become viable, and that's the reason why we don't see them.
I think it's mainly if you're going like eagles, and then your opponent is going champion, you add a couple of slingers and you manage to kind of... But it's really like a solution for a short period. It just annoys me that they don't do any damage to anything else.
That's Incas, right? They're supposed to be like a counter-civilization. They have the Kamayuk, they have the Slinger. Their Eagle have more pierce armor, I thought. Yeah, whatever.
Little note, if you come to our Civ of the Month segment, I will actually have a great anecdote from when I was playing Franks versus Incas. It was quite an epic match. So look forward to that.
All right, already foreshadowing. Yeah.
Yes, foreshadowing.
Now, to end the main differences in the game, or like things that went with the December patch, is a big thing in my opinion, and I think we both will have an opinion about this one. The allied vision is now standard in all Age of Empires 2 games, meaning that in all team games, usually, we used to have cartography, which was an upgrade at the market, which showed you the vision of your allies. Then in the E, you automatically research cartography once you build your market. Now, the moment the game starts, you have shared vision with your allies.
In theory.
Cursed. What do you think about this?
Yeah, actually, I'm really sad. Because now I won't ever have allied vision anymore in my preferred format, which is 4v4 Nomad. That's the game I like to play.
Yeah.
So when I saw this update, I got super excited because I love seeing what my allies are doing in Nomad, especially. It makes me much more able to have an idea where the enemies are, all this kind of stuff. So when it was announced, I was super happy. I was like, oh, great, I love having a Portuguese ally.
Mm-hmm.
So then I started joining lobby games. And each time, it's a setting, by the way, that you can activate or deactivate. And I wasn't part of this vote, but the 4v4 Nomad community decided that, we don't want this allied vision.
You could toggle it off. Well, to be honest, I've played some Nomad as well, and I don't like this edition.
Why not?
I think quality of life features can be included in game, like the auto farm. I think is something nice. There was a lot of hate about it. Even the auto scout. Those are technical things you need to do that make the threshold for new players bigger to jump into the game. And I get that this is something of the same, because for a lot of people it's not that intuitive. You need to build a market and then you get the vision. It's also somewhere in the feudal age that you share the vision if someone is being rushed in Dark Age or whatever. But I think if you have the focus to look at your allies, usually you're not that new of a player. It's also a strategic element, in my opinion, that they've taken away. Not necessarily a technical one or like an execution, or one about execution. To me, the market becomes less valuable now. That was one of the main values of the market building in a team game. And also, it's like a choice in your build. Like, do you want to market up early, or do you want to like make a military building and a blacksmith first?
No.
In those games, I think it's like it takes away a bit of the player choice. And I don't know if the intended like target group, like the newer players who they want to make the game a bit easier to step into, I think, is really that much affected by it.
I don't agree.
Okay.
I'll tell you why. So the market building, giving that bonus was just weird to me because a lot of modern games, RTS games, have shared vision with your allies for a lot of reasons. Mainly it's to give a fair battle, because when you're playing like team games against a team that's on Discord while you're playing with randoms, you're in an amazing disadvantage because they can coordinate, they can help each other out, they have much more idea of what's going on.
Yeah.
Flaring, all that stuff helps, but typing is very difficult. So giving allied vision makes the battlefield more fair. That's number one. And secondly, like for the build, the orders, I mean, it's always going to be cheaper if you want a fast castle to go blacksmith market than to go barracks plus stable archery range, whatever, and a blacksmith.
In an FC build.
Yeah, it's never gonna. The market also has other benefits for balancing your eco. I think it's strong enough. It doesn't need to have this additional thing. So for me, allied vision is completely essential to make random teams work better together.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. I'm not so sure I agree completely. Because I think, well, Age of Empires is a top-notch game, but in most games, you could just have like a team chat, voice chat in-game. Age of Empires doesn't have that feature. So that's why you need to type. That's, to me, it's a separate issue. Like the shared vision from the market, to me, it added something to this. Yeah. It makes the game a bit more complicated, but it's the complication that I like, that you need this to unlock this and this to unlock this. Yeah. But I get what you say, that it's a big thing if you're going against a well-coordinated team and you can't even see what they're doing. And I know in H4, you automatically have the allied vision.
Yeah, every modern RTS has that because it's essential to make a cohesive team.
Have you played H4 now?
I still haven't.
I'm not sure if it's still in the game because I played it last year, but then it was like if your ally is attacked, you get a horror notification as well. Even. It's that far in the shared vision.
That's kind of annoying.
I didn't think that was annoying because a lot of times in team games, if your ally is attacked, a lot of people are like, meh, he will deal with it. And they don't even look at it. And then you ping and then they're like, yeah, deal with it or run. And then yeah.
No, but even in our games, like, we're on Discord.
Yeah.
And especially when we had another colleague, I won't mention.
Yeah.
He was being attacked and he just mentions it, I'm being attacked. So you're like, okay, should I go and help? No real response. You have no idea how serious
it's in full focus mode.
it is. Then you eventually build your market and you see it's completely destroyed. And it's like, why didn't you say anything? Or even worse, you send your army to help and I'm like, yeah, where are they? And he doesn't respond. It's like, up. And it's like, but where? You have no clue.
Yeah.
It's like, so it's, for me, that's frustrating. That's not fun.
I can have it as well. Or sometimes I think I can deal with this. And then the moment I realize I cannot deal with this is the moment that my walls are open. They're in, like, it's too late. You know what I mean?
And you don't even mention it.
Yeah. Because I think it's not worth mentioning. And then suddenly, oh yeah, by the way, guys, I'm dying. Or I'm dead. I
can really see a lot of games with random people going like, someone watching your base and like, what the hell, noob? How dare you build this building or this place? Or like, what is this eco GG and like surrender, no? I can see that happening actually.
I had it this week. I was playing a game and I was just asking, I haven't played the map that much, Oasis. And I was in a random team game. I wanted to play Nomad. There was no lobby. So I pushed the team game and it put me on Oasis. Now I've played Oasis a long time ago, I think. I've seen some games on it, but I wasn't sure about the map. So I asked, are there no boars? Because I hadn't scouted them yet. And then my teammate was like, GG, noob, what the that I'll edit out, so it's not explicit. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say that word. And
put a bleep.
Yeah. And then I was like, oh, this is my team. Like, if the game starts like this, I'm like, okay. Yeah. Then I know what kind of teammates I have.
It's true that I've seen that happen when I play someone's Portuguese, and I can see one of my allies is doing, like, I saw that once. He went to lumber camp instead of town center in Nomad. And I think it was a Huns player, and he built a dock.
I've had it.
And then in lumber camp, and then we could all see it, and it was like GG.
But to be honest,
it's so awkward.
it hasn't happened to you that you're playing Nomad and you automatically start with the dog and then suddenly, oh shit, I'm Hans. Oh.
No, but yeah, it happened to me. But it happened to everybody. What I do, even now with the market, sometimes people at later game stages of the game, they start pinging my idle villagers,
or idle
hey,
army.
Here. I'm like,
yeah, oh, that's annoying. If you have that much time on your hands, use it. Yeah.
So wait, what is our end conclusion? Do we like it or not?
It is a modernization of the game, probably. As an old school player or someone who got used to the previous system, I don't necessarily like it. But as you say, it's probably standard now. And, the Allied Vision, no matter how you come by it, it always depends a bit on your allies what the real benefit of Allied Vision is, I think. It depends a lot on your team. Yeah.
I think we need to, as a community, learn to use it and not flame each other.
Yeah. And to use it in the proper way. If someone's rushed...
It's not because now you can see that if someone loses a village to a boar, that you need to surrender the game. It happened in the past, and it might not even affect the outcome,
Yeah. So don't use it to look at your allies to give them feedback during the game, and especially about execution things, because that's something, you can tell someone just execute better. Yeah, very good feedback. But use it to see if your ally is in trouble. And even if they don't ask help, maybe proactively just send help. Or if you see they're in trouble, ask, do you need help? And ping it. Something like this.
I want to launch a challenge to our viewers, though. Please join a random team game on ladder if you want, if you dare, and try to just focus on someone's farm placement. Just be pinging the farm. No, this is not the correct placement. Carol, let's join a game together, Pen, and then just be together, focusing on our third ally's farm placements.
If you really want to challenge yourself and your teammate, look at your teammates and count their villagers, count their houses and their town center, and wait until the moment that they are housed, then ping their base and say housed. Time it perfectly so that they get a notification about housed, and you ping their base and you say you're housed. Yeah, that's a challenge. It will be difficult. Your own play will suffer from it, but it will be worth it.
Wow, I get just elevated heart rate just by hearing you describe that. Okay, let's move on. I will cover the next part. So we've went through the general changes, so the overall changes. Now we're heading into the Civ-specific ones, starting with Gujaras. So their mounted unit bonus damage, so they do extra bonus damage, like camels against knights, this kind of things, was reduced. Instead of always being 40%, now it starts at 20, goes up to 30, starts at 20 in Feudal Age, goes to 30 in Castle Age, and ends up at the original 40% only in Imperial Age. That's the first part of their nerf. What do you think of this, Pen?
In Feudal, it was never that big, this bonus, but just in general, I think it's a good nerf. Probably still very strong, because it usually comes into play in Castle Age, where it's already 30% now, and then 40 in Imp. For me, they could have also just made it 30 in all ages.
I don't see a big impact also. Like you said, the real fear, or the unit I fear the most from Gujaras is their Imperial Heavy Camels with the unique tech, that they have +5 melee armor. Those things, they destroy paladins. Even Teuton paladins, they are so strong.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it could be reduced even more. I think it could be maybe 10, 20, 30 or something.
And I don't know if the stacking does that much, because in Feudal Age, I feel like the bonus damage for mounted units is what is it, a scout versus a skirmisher or something?
Honestly,
or versus a monk?
Monk, but I don't think that matters.
But they have the camel, the camel scout. So maybe that's the reason why they have, okay.
That's true.
And then 30% in Castle, I think 30% is already a lot. If they would stack, 20, 30...
think that could be 20 or 25. 20, 25 would be maybe more reasonable, no?
25 is enough, yeah.
Yeah, I think so too.
Especially with that imp tech, as you mentioned, in a post-imp situation, 25 extra bonus damage is enough. And also, their rams, a ram usually does a lot of damage to a building. And that's because of bonus damage. If they have the extra bonus damage, and then they are also affected by siege engineers, like the Gurjara rams are also like
insane.
OP after a while. I think like they can just waltz through. Not enough.
The one thing that counters the Gurjaras, let's say, is the pikes and the helps, and for that they have their unique unit, the elite chakram, chakram warrior. So they've also made some changes to those. So the damage was reduced from 5 to 3 damage per chakra they throw. The elite from 6 to 4. So that means that they do a lot less damage because they were already not the most powerful units. It was more the effect they had in mass. So when they all throw their little chakra, it did a lot of damage, especially because they pass through the unit a bit like a scorpion.
Mm-hmm.
So they reduced the damage that they do significantly, but they increased the pass-through damage. It used to be that when it passes through a unit, it does half the damage. So now that has been increased, so it actually does the full damage. Also, also to balance this out, I guess, they get an extra bonus damage against infantry, because as I said, their role was to kill pikes and helps, because it's such a cavalry-focused civ. But I think it was overly strong before, and that's why they reduced their attack, but gave them a little bonus against infantry to make them only work well against infantry. So what do you think of my analysis?
Yeah, it's true. Do you know what the base melee armor from a paladin is?
Didn't know I was going to be put on the spot. I guess.
Take a guess, just
4?
based on how strong you think. 3,
4, 3.
Without upgrades, it's only 2. 2. But then you can get up to +5 melee armor because of upgrades. But then if you look at the previous editions of the Chakram with upgrades, they actually dealt quite a lot of damage to a paladin. Now, with their nerf, it's like 1 damage, I think, they will deal with the upgrades. And then 1 damage, if it passes through and it's still 100%, it's still 1 damage or 2 damage maybe. I haven't done the exact calculations. So basically, they've made them weak enough so they don't do that much damage, and then they need to rely on their bonus damage and the pass-through damage. I think they will be more of a situational infantry counter. So, good nerf.
So wait, the question is, did they make them into slingers?
Yes and no. Like, more of a scorpion that only works on infantry. And I think they will also damage archers if the archers aren't microed properly. If you have your archers just walking in a tight formation, then you get surprised by the chakrams, you will also lose your archers very quickly.
Interesting. Well, let's see how that balances out to Gurjaras. Very powerful civ. Another powerful civ that was nerfed was the Hindustanis. They got a reduction, so they have a bonus attack speed on their camels, which used to be 25%, which was reduced very slightly to 20%. What do you think? Big change or not?
Not the biggest change, but still like a small nerf. And I think that's a good way to tweak the game, because the balance in general is quite good. And like tweaking little bits is a nice thing. But we've said it in our last patch discussion in our trial episodes. The main thing with Hindustanis is the fact that they have such an open tech tree with so much options. The faster attacking camels, in my opinion, isn't really the reason why they're so good.
No, it's their cheaper vills, right?
It's a combination of their cheaper vills, their unique unit. Then you have the camels and you have the hand cannoneers. So it's a combination of a good eco and then all late game options to
overpower.
Yeah.
Okay, talking about overpowering, the Poles, they've been kind of up and coming as one of the most broken civs, and they've tried to nerf them. So when Poles villagers mine stone, they used to get half of the stone as gold, so in addition to the stone they were mining. So it was a bit like for every 2 vils on stone, you get 1 vil on gold, which was very, very powerful. Now they've changed that slightly. So basically, it's now for every 3 vils on stone, you're getting 1 on gold. While it's it's a good nerf, I guess, the real power of the poles, to me, is in their full warks and their insane food production. So I don't think this is going to change the poles too much. Do you agree, Ben?
Mm-hmm. In an early economy, a 50% extra resource, or like a half a villager extra per villager you put on a resource, is massive. Although stone isn't really a valued resource in the early stages of the game, but this is like a very strong eco boost. And end game, if you're playing like very late imp, this also gives you a lot more gold in your base resources. Like without relics, without going to the extra golds, you just have more gold in your base because you also have stone that you can mine. And then the calculation was also there that if you mine stone and you sell it, it's actually a faster way to generate gold for the poles, or it used to be, than just straight on going to gold. So I think this nerf will do something, but I think it's balanced because it also requires you to farm more openly, like away from the protection. So you need to secure your base.
Well, okay. Interesting. Now, we've been talking a lot about nerfs so far, but there's also some, let's say, changes. The Portuguese. I mean, we already mentioned when we talked about the Allied Vision, that Portuguese used to have that as a team bonus.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, they were beloved because of that. But the Civ itself was not that great. It was good, maybe underrated, but it wasn't one of the better Civs.
It depends on the map.
Yeah, of course.
I think it was more of a naval Civ, but on open maps, it wasn't really.
Yeah. Well, Pen, you want to say what their new bonuses are?
Yeah, so they made their team bonus a general thing in the game, so they had to think of a new one. As you said, it was always nice to have Portuguese in your team, so they thought, well, maybe we should give them something that's has the same feel to it, so your teammates are actually happy. They think, oh, I have a Portuguese in my team, nice. So what they decided is that their team bonus is that technologies, except for the age up, all research 25% faster.
Wow.
That's massive, I think.
That's incredible, because there are some upgrades that you have to do from your town center, like loom, wheelbarrow. So having those 25% faster just gives your entire team an extra villager, at some point. It's pretty good.
And then for their private bonus, like just a general Civ bonus, they also have like a Polish kind of thing. For them, it's when they harvest berries, like the foragers, they also trickle in wood at the same rate. Like 33% of the food you get from the berries is harvested as wood, which is a nice buff to your early economy. This has proven for a lot of people to give them a far stronger early game, making them more successful on the open maps.
The Portuguese were already interesting because they had this overall gold reduction on their units, but it's still their bonus. They still have that. That's why we will discuss in the upcoming tournament why, for example, Viper, I think, Viper used them so well, going full gold composition, crossbow and knights, because you get 20% less gold costs. So you can much more easily pump out heavy gold costing units. But the problem was they were good at this point of the game, but had a lot of difficulty getting there because they were quite weak in the early game. So by giving them these bonuses, the small bonuses just makes them much more easy to survive. So overall, the Portuguese became much more of a player in the game, basically on every type of map.
Also because it's easier, I feel. Going full gold comp requires a certain macro behind it or a build-up that's not too easy to pull off. Usually it's a fast castle with eco and staying safe. And now they have a more standard start of the game. I think they will be like an S tier Civ now.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. I mean, especially in team games.
Mm. Yeah, and water, they were already like a very good Civ with the Feitoria, the Caraval, the gold reduction being good for their ships, as well as the faster research from tech being good to get like the the upgrades, because with naval combat, that's always very important to get to your upgrades as fast as possible. They haven't changed too much on a water map because you don't really go for the berries, but they're still as strong as they were there, and they are just stronger on land. So like on maps like Migration or on a hybrid map, I think they will also be very much stronger.
I see you've included Tatars as well.
Mm-hmm.
You think this was an interesting thing to discuss?
Yeah, I've added it because I feel like a lot of people have like a favorite unique unit, right? That's the thing we did as a kid. We looked at the units and we thought, oh, this is cool.
Teutonic Knights for most people, but it's not the real answer.
I'm going to be honest. For me, one of my favorite units is the Flaming Camel. They're just so perfectly designed. A camel putting itself on fire, exploding in your base. If you just imagine it happening really in medieval times, you watch the camel come in and exploding, it's like, what the hell's going on? You know? Wild chaos.
Mm.
No, it's a meme, but there was something wrong with the Tatars. They didn't get the intended bonus damage from siege engineers, which is horrible. That's the reason why you couldn't break your enemy with your flaming camels. So siege engineers gives a plus 40% anti-building damage, and it didn't apply to the flaming camel before, but now it does.
I knew it. Each time. Exactly. Finally, they get. I knew it, and there was something wrong. You know, each time I go, my whole economy is focused on massing flaming camels, and I keep losing. So I'm so happy that they found out why, you know, and then they fixed it.
The final thing, which is like at the end, I put the least important things, is for Vikings. They have a warship discount bonus, so their warships are cheaper, but it no longer affects the transport ships.
Sad.
It's not a big thing. It can be like for island landing or stuff, but it's like a very small, change.
Well, we'll see. I don't think, maybe landings, but I mean, not really.
This won't be too big. So I think that sums up the December patch.
Mm-hmm.
It's been out for a month now. We have been able to test it. I think they do a good job at this. They make small changes, generally. If something is really broken, they go a bit heavier on it. Like the chakram is a big nerf, I feel. But in general, they've made some small changes, and they keep things interesting for us players without messing up the balance too much, I feel.
Yes, indeed. Thanks, developers, for keeping this game interesting and making these changes. They also give us a lot of content, so thanks for that. So, what else happened in the news?
The things coming up to Age of Empires 2 from these developers, which you've just mentioned, a few things they've announced at the end of 2022. First of all, they will bring Age of Empires to the console gaming. Right now, you are able to play with controller if you really like it. Dave has an alternate account for it. I think Marauder is his main, and he has like a controller player secondary account.
Do you know the ELO of this account?
Pretty good, better than me. I think it's 1400 or something. Yeah, yeah, it's insane. But just generally, it's not really suited for control play. It's a game where you need to micro task a lot of things.
But actually, I looked into it, and So first off, I looked at the announcement trailer, and I was a bit confused because they start mentioning, for the very first time in 20-something years, Age of Empires is coming to consoles. And I was like, scratching my head, because I remember seeing Age of Empires 2 on the PlayStation.
Age of Kings. Yeah.
Like many years ago. I never played it, but I saw it. So I was so confused that they were like, what are they? Huh? So I did a bit of digging, and it's just Microsoft. They didn't have their own Xbox when they made this game. So Age of Empires 2 on PlayStation 2. It wasn't even originally meant to go on PlayStation. I think it was meant on the Sega or something, another console. But so it ended up somehow on PlayStation. People said it was horrible to play.
No doubt.
It's funny that they're like, first ever on console, like kind of rewriting their history. Because it's the first time it's on their console, on the Xbox. Anyway, there's also been a little bit of insight into how it would work. The main thing that they want to do, and this is maybe slightly dangerous, they are going to have cross-platform play. So that means that you can be playing on your Xbox and you can go in a ranked lobby playing against PC players.
Ranked, yeah, okay, yes. Yeah, nice. Our elo will inflate, but that's good.
Exactly. We're rubbing their hands like, I'm going to eat these Xbox players up. So one of their stated goals was that they want to have the console experience be competitive with the PC experience. So that means that they don't want to have the console players be the ones that are getting destroyed, okay?
So, yeah.
But how do they do this, you ask? Well, actually, they have a system. Like, we have control groups, right?
Yeah.
Like, some pro players use that. No, it's a feature you can use. So they've kind of incorporated that into the gameplay. So if, I don't know which combination, but you can kind of make groups quite easily with like a kind of a wheel. So you could have like, somehow have your trebuchets into it and then have your other army in another one. So then I saw gameplay where you can see like he goes like somewhere in this wheel quickly to select the elephants, clicks on something, then switches to the trebs with this wheel thing, and then clicks on a castle, and you see like how it changes, so that you don't have to double click or drag or so they want to work with this system, but this is okay, whatever. But the second part is that they don't want you to micro your economy too much. So what they've included is that idle workers will automatically gather resources.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I've also seen some speculation. There's nothing been confirmed yet. For example, farming. Like, placing 60 farms on a console will be very difficult. So perhaps villagers will auto-place farms. We don't know yet. But, I mean, it is a bit worrying that they're giving all these kind of automated systems to console players so that they can be more on par with PC players. I don't know what you think about all this, Pen.
The level of control we have in Age of Empires, putting a few archers on stand ground, using a villager to lure a boar, like all these things, even if they automate the military and make it so much easy, you won't ever have a really good control. You know what I mean? It's just an overkill, like all units here, all units there. Villagers can do tasks automatically, but even if you play the extreme AI, if you have like the full extreme AI maintaining your economy, that's very good. But a player with some experience on a computer can easily take advantage of this. With like a lot of raids everywhere, I feel they will get shredded. Like from a strategic perspective, I get it completely. You can do it on a console as well. It's just how you manage it all. I think you won't ever be able to compete with a player on a computer. And their AI systems aren't good enough. Like the ones from Microsoft itself. I've played the Barbarian AI and the other one, what was it? Rehoboam. Those are very good. But like, I think the general elo right now on the computer is 1,000, and that should be the
average.
The average always in a good elo system without too much people dropping off and stuff. Yeah, for a console player, they won't have the same average as the PC players. It's just not possible, in my opinion.
Time will tell. Yeah, I guess. I think it's a wait and see kind of situation. I mean, I think I'm the most excited about seeing maybe some YouTube series where we have pros like Hera and Viper playing on the console and seeing how high they can get their elo. I would definitely watch that. Yeah. That would be hilarious.
Yeah.
Are there any other updates or, let's say, new releases coming for the Age of Empires franchise?
Well, I'm going to start with the mobile Age of Empires app because it lends itself with the console announcement. They will also make a mobile game for Age of Empires.
Really?
I've had a lot of ads on my phone because I look at a lot of Age of Empires or RTS things. I don't know if you have the same, where you get like ads that look so much like Age of Empires. They even use the same models and stuff. And then it's like some crappy game. So apparently they got inspired and they thought, well, we'll make our own game.
Own crappy game.
Yeah. I don't think too much is known from it. I thought about it. If they make it like a short game that's not really Age of Empires, but it's something based on it, I think it could be okay. Playing Age of Empires on the phone, I think is never going to happen.
No. But like on the other hand, I think in China, most of the players that play League of Legends are playing it on their phone, which is like a super fast action MOBA game. So I mean, it's not impossible with some of the console technology, but I don't think they will go that way. That will be a lot of resources and probably not enough people.
Yeah.
I think the most I say successful type of game could be these kind of building your town, spend 5 coins to build your barracks quicker.
Or wait an hour.
Yeah, or wait an hour, and like with this, simple animations and like attack your neighbor with 5 knights and like, and actually it could be fun.
I play some strategy games on my phone, but they're all games that last like 5 minutes max. Or like if I play chess on my phone, it's like the 1 minute chess.
Oh, the quick play.
Because when I play a game on my phone, it's either I'm waiting for a bit, I'm holding, like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's very short. Otherwise, I will just play on a computer. I would never play a game on my phone.
I've been playing a lot on my phone.
Yeah?
Yes, during my holiday.
What do you play?
But I'll tell you more about it in the outro.
So yeah, there's a mobile game coming. I think we will check it out when it's there, but I'm not so sure what to expect. I think it's from a commercial standpoint and probably not too expensive to make, and then we'll see what it does.
Hopefully it's at least kind of fun.
Final thing they've announced at the end of 2022 is that they will make a new expansion for Age of Empires 2, and it will be called Return to Rome. Now, we don't know that much about it, but probably it will be based on the mod which already exists, which uses the Age of Empires 2 TE engine and just restyles it to a more Age of Empires 1 ancient Roman world with new civilizations, new things. If it's the same system or not, I don't know, because they are not working together with the creators of that mod. So I'm not so sure what to expect here.
I've heard that it will be a bit like, you're starting up Age of Empires, and then you have like choices, you want to play Rome, like you want to play the I guess, kind of remade Age of Empires 1, right?
Yeah.
Or do you want to play the normal 2 that we know? In any case, it's exciting, no? I mean, imagine playing modern technology Age of Empires 1 with maybe new things and this era of history. I think you're one of the most excited ones, no, for this?
Age of Empires 1 was my main childhood game, so the nostalgia should be big if it really resembles it. Also, Spirit of the Law has a nice video about the already existing mod about the Roman civilizations, and it seems pretty cool. They have some new features, but because they're not working together with them, I'm not so sure what the developers will do with this expansion. How big it will be, I don't think it will be as big as Age of Empires 2, maybe just a few civilizations. I'm not so sure. Yeah.
What I'm most surprised by is that you say that this was the last announcement. Because there's one massive one that you didn't include.
Oh?
I mean, you of all people, I would have expected to have included this update.
Okay.
Have you not heard? They are remaking Age of Mythology.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Come on, Age of Mythology Definitive Edition.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, I was thinking, what have I missed about Age of Empires 2? But no, it's true. Yeah,
it's in the franchise.
Yeah, it's the same franchise. We've played it. I think we've also played it a lot together, right?
Oh yeah,
Age of Mythology,
especially with the cheats on where you can spam god powers.
Yeah,
and
Wrath of the Gods. I still remember it. Yeah,
flood there, lightning there.
And then to get all heroes, it was Isis, hear my plea.
I mean, I just remember the Titans, like so much more cooler than a Wonder. A Wonder is like, oh, I'm gonna win if I defend. This is like the Wonder grows legs and just kind of like raw, just starts smashing your opponent's face,
just like an OP giant.
So much more fun.
Yeah.
Memories.
Yeah. But I have played the HD version or something of Age of Mythology, and I didn't really. Well, the way we used to play it as a kid was very different, right?
You don't say.
Those games, to me, the RTS games were city builders, campaigns. I played from the competitive point of view. I think it was way less balanced Age of Mythology, but I can be wrong. I'm not so sure.
I mean, I mainly attracted it with either playing with cheats on in like building your base map mode. Sorry, but what I mainly remember is that the campaign didn't feel like the Age of Empires 2 campaign at all. It really felt like a story. You were like playing with these heroes.
Yeah, way nicer.
Cutscenes.
Voice acting.
It was a lot more like battle focused. No, I don't remember building my base at any point. Maybe it happened, but I don't remember it.
It was the same system, right? You gather resources and stuff. And then I think if you picked Gaia or as a god, that was a nice thing. You needed to pick your god. Then you get grass everywhere. You build something. It was like, you did have something, the temples, and then the Egyptians built like the obelisks to gather favor, and you need a favor to make the mythical units. Oh, we're getting deep into this. I think the main thing I remember is the campaign and how cool it was. Like besieging Troy, I still remember it. It was like they had these big walls and epic campaigns when I was a kid. I'm not so sure if it will still feel as epic to me now. To be honest,
I think if they release it with like a co-op campaign, I think we can definitely have some fun just reliving the nostalgia. But I don't see it becoming like a competitive player or whatever.
And I think for Age of Empires 4, there were a few Age of Mythology players there. With this, they might be hurting their own franchise, no? Because Age of Empires 2 was still alive and is still alive now, but they've attracted a lot of RTS players from other games. Is there a chance you think that a lot of Age of Empires 4 players will move away to the next thing?
A lot of those people that play now played Mythology like we did, and we were going to buy it for fun and to have some laughs, and that's enough to make it. We'll see. Only time will tell. But I'm excited. I think we can move on.
Yeah. So, Kirst, what did you think about the grand melee we had this month or December?
Well, I think there's a lot we can talk about, but let's not go too much into detail. And I want to start maybe more from a positive angle, and then later we can go into some of the drama. So, first of all, I thought the games were amazing.
Yeah.
Like some of the best Age of Empires we've seen in the end of the year, and we've been quite spoiled with great tournaments. So I think the matches were very interesting. It was only 8 players because the qualifiers were before and were quite tough. So only the best 8 were invited. And I thought that made every match intense. You know what I mean? There was no filler.
Yeah.
Everything was right, like high stakes. What did you think about it, about the matches?
I'll start by saying that I really liked the flow. If you remember in our trial episode, we discussed about our favorite format and how we like it and whether or not to do it live, like a LAN event or online. And we said we like the flow of a online event, but I felt like this LAN event really had a good flow to it.
Yeah.
It was quite clear what to expect. Things were pretty streamlined. We didn't have to wait too much. The games were competitive and they followed each other quite nicely, I feel. So just the flow as a viewer, I really enjoyed it. It felt...
And what do you think of the casting hour, like the time the matches were shown? For us Europeans, it was quite early. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it was early, but for me, it wasn't that big a deal because I was actually sick at the time, so nothing better to do than just lying on the couch watching Age of Empires.
So lucky, so lucky.
If I would have been working, it would have been harder, I feel. But if they want to broadcast it all around the globe, they need to pick a centralized time. And if it's our evening time, that's, maybe not as accessible like around the globe.
I liked it actually because I was, I think, working, but I was doing something that I could put Age on the second monitor more or less, And I enjoyed so much during my day, just casually watching a bit and then working a bit and watching a bit. And yeah, I really enjoyed the games. I thought they were all really close.
Yeah.
Like a lot of games that went to the final fifth game, at least in the quarterfinals. Also, I wanted to mention your favorite game of the tournament was, as I recall, the show match of ACCM versus Velese, right?
It's the one with all the TC drop fill fighting shenanigans,
the
right?
Outpost walls and
yeah. Yeah, it was pretty good. Yeah.
They were so funny and laughing. ACM was laughing his ass off. It was hilarious. But beyond that, actually, that was also great to have this kind of funny filler-in matches. The show match, I thought it was very fun as a distraction and a kind of refresher after all the high-intensity games. Now, maybe we'll not go into the games too much, but if there's any like series, like which one would you want to? Will stay with you. Let's say which of these marked you the most?
Like the matchup, you mean?
Yeah, like the full the battle. Like could be a quarterfinal matchup, a semifinal, final, whatever. Like which one was really like, wow? If you watch only one of these, you should watch this one.
Well, depends a bit. I think the final is always like a highlight, and then you had the third place matchup, which was Tato Viper. The final was Hera Leary, but I think the most spectacular one, just as like the hype around it, I would say it's the semi-final between Tato and Hera. Considering the last semi-final for Red Bull, this one, well, I'll just say the result, right? Hera won 4-0 against Tato, and that doesn't mean that the games weren't competitive. It just means that Hera really kept his calm, had a good game plan, and was able to turn a competitive game into a win each time. And considering how his last semi-final against Tato went and his disappointment, I think this one was a clear statement of Hera saying, I am ready to show what I can do here.
Like, I agree with you because I think it was the highest level Hera's ever played at in a tournament.
Better than the final, I think, even.
Yeah, indeed. The casters were also amazed, but there were also some strange strategic choices by Tato, like the Goth choice on the island type map was very strange.
I got what he tried to do. He wanted to lame, right? And to kill the docking villager, and
Yeah, but I heard Hera's response. He questioned it because he said, when I saw him choosing Goths, I knew he was going to go for something strange. So he spent all his time like scouting, making sure he wasn't getting landed. So, it's too, how you say this?
Predictable.
Yeah, it's too much signaled when you choose Goths that you're going to do something like that. It's not really a surprise.
And the main downside, I think, is like the initial damage can be hard, but if it fails, then you really have a bad water sieve.
Yeah.
And then you're stuck with Goths for the rest of the game. So there's no plan B, I feel. It's like plan A. Oh, plan A failed. He might as well have resigned immediately then.
I think if you're a Hera fan, then you want to see this match because it's his highest level. If you're also a Hera fan, you might want to see the final because, I mean, Hera has a, history of losing to Leary in finals. And to have him be, I think, 2-4, I think he was at the worst point, and then winning 3 games in a row against Leary to crown himself the winner, that was an amazing ride for sure. But side note, just for most fun games, I really enjoyed Leary Doubt in the quarterfinals. That was an insane, cool matchup and very fun games all around.
Yeah. And the Jordan Dowd show match, I feel like the show matches also, they were very lighthearted. They are also nice to look at. Any Dowd game which we didn't get too much. We got one proper game and then a show match.
Yeah, indeed. Now, the tournament, there was a DreamHack, at DreamHack. So there was quite some other tournaments going on at the same time. And there was quite a lot of, let's say, discussion going around for this tournament.
Yeah.
So let's start with the venue itself. What did you think when you were watching the stream, especially the first quarterfinals? and you see an empty audience. Like, I mean, there was almost nobody there.
Well, it's a shame, I feel. I like the tournament. I like the way they set it up. When I watched the games, I think it was done all really professional. I like the maps, but they were really late with the announcement. Also, a result of this is that Mr. Yo and Vinchester might be a different reason, but Mr. Yo and Vinchester couldn't make it in time to the LAN event, so they were replaced by Jordan and Dowd. Then the seats also were very empty, but I think it's the end of the year. A lot of people have busy schedules. If you announce it a few weeks in advance, except if you live really nearby, it's not that easy to just say, oh, I'll go.
Mhm.
You know, it has to be like, I would have considered going, maybe. We talked about it even, but it's, yeah. Well, I got sick at the time, but I didn't know. It's just, yeah, I'm not that surprised. It's still a niche game. People would need to plan it. Players as well as viewers.
Mm-hmm. The tickets for Red Bull were very cheap. It was at a cool location, but this was in the DreamHack context. So basically, I think you were required to buy a ticket to DreamHack itself. So that means that there are a lot of other shows and tournaments going on at the time.
Yeah, also.
So the ticket was not cheap. And then, you know, you can spend your time going around looking at things and other stuff, or you could sit there. But yeah, that's kind of a high barrier. Coupled, like you said, with the short time for planning the trip, and it made it so, yeah, sadly, there was less audience. And I think that gave a less hype and also made a lot of very funny jokes possible in the chat, but also a lot of criticism.
Yeah.
So maybe let's talk about the chat. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I had to text you, like, you have to watch the chat on the Twitch. It's going crazy.
Yeah.
What did you just describe me what you saw when you entered it? Like, what did you see?
When I checked in, it was like 4 out of 5 quotes were Spanish quotes. People speaking in Spanish in the English cast, and basically complaining about the fact that it is what do you say, non-public stream, like it's a
Closed,
private stream, closed stream, yeah, and that all the casting is in English, which was announced with at the late announcement of the tournament. This was also like mentioned there. I think the casters were mentioned. It was a closed event. Yeah, it was just. The spam of it really made the chat for anyone else impossible, I feel like, because you couldn't really see. I can speak a word of Spanish, but I can't. Yeah, if it's a chat like this, I'm not even gonna bother. And then it was all very, very, very negative, which to me wasn't necessary at all.
But at least it made me feel like I was watching a big esports game. Because I don't know if you've ever watched
because of the toxicity.
Yes, I used to watch the League of Legends World Championship, and we weren't even that close to the spam and toxicity. But no, I think it's just something that is avoidable, I guess. But to act like that was a bit childish.
Yeah, I think it's a free stream you get for a game you love. We're all adults. This game is 20 years old. I don't think there's many youngsters playing this. So we're all adults with lives and responsibilities. I think we could behave in a normal manner and see that this is something nice we get. You can check it out for free. And you don't really need to be like a wealthy tourist complaining in the hotel. Like, it feels like very... Entitled. Yeah, it's ugh.
But it was very funny as well. Like some of the jokes, especially the match of Viper ACCM, where the sunlight started coming up and they had to build a tower of cardboard boxes. I mean, the jokes. I was laughing so much.
IT on point, but it was also like, yeah, the Spanish sent the sun. Yeah. And that's something I liked. You really noticed the difference. There was a lot of the toxicity and criticism, like in the initial, then the mods got onto it. And then you saw the other people commenting that everybody was like this is way out of proportion, making jokes about it. Yeah. And then I thought, okay, this is my AOE community, the one I know.
Yeah.
I don't want to take away about the criticism because I think they have honest remarks about it, but I think if a tournament is organized, money is being put in, effort is being put in, enjoy it, and you can leave some criticism, I feel, but not in this way. This is not at all beneficial and just took away to what was generally a good thing.
The only valid criticism I have is after the finals, they didn't really give Hera the time to properly finish his speech before abducting him for some weird trailer that they showed. Nor did they let Hera at least shake Lyri's hand or something. I think Lyri was asked to stay seated, and I don't know. That was just not a way to handle the ending of the tournament. But overall, I mean, I don't know why they're trying to drum up some hype about their secrecy and who's behind it and all this kind of stuff. Whatever. We just want to see good games, and we got good games. So, I mean, what more can you ask,
Yeah. Do you follow the Kings and Plebeians interview podcast?
Yes, but I haven't seen the episode with Hera, if that's the one you're going to refer to.
So there, Hera, he mentions what happens, and it was something they discussed before. They knew it was going to happen, but it happened way sooner than they anticipated. The interview, they wanted to have the narrative of the mythical thing and something they tried out. It wasn't that well executed, way too soon. We also discussed it maybe it's for the people who did the effort to go there live and to buy their ticket to reward them with a proper interview with all the players, and I can generally understand that. But for Hera as well, it was his big win. It was his time to talk to his broad audience, and it was cut short, a bit too short, I feel. Yeah, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Now, beyond that, there was another maybe thing to discuss, some other drama. The broadcasting team, the casters. We had Nili, Dave, then we had Artosis, someone that is famous from another game, from StarCraft, and then Ornlu was included as well. Ali was also part of it. What do you think, Pen?
I really like Ornlu, and I've checked his cast before. I did realize that it's actually fun to see him there. He seems a bit more not stressed, but a bit less relaxed in his how do you say, physical
composure.
Composure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you listen to him, he's just as fluent as all the other guys, but he's just a bit more tightened up in his stature.
Yeah, my girlfriend was passing by, and I pointed out with his shirt that doesn't seem to fit him very well, and he's standing a bit in your first prom or your first dance, at the side of the room, a little bit not sure how to compose.
But I think this might have been his biggest event ever, and it's a LAN event as well. I really like his game knowledge and his insight, and I think he did a very, very good job.
Yeah.
But it's just that fact, Nili is definitely a very experienced caster, and you can see that as well.
Well, he's experienced, but he also made, let's say, some interesting jokes. I'm not sure if you're aware of the situation. What happened?
There was one joke I remember I laughed really hard. Oh, was he the one who said, the castle that was denied, it wasn't a doubt castle, but a lot of vills died, and he said, I'm in doubt if it's a castle in Age of Empires or is it
a football stadium.
A football stadium in Qatar being built.
Exactly.
I was like, what? I liked it though. It was
me too.
A good joke, but I get why some people would say
Strangely enough, apparently that joke made it so that the cost of that whole day is not viewable anymore on Twitch.
What?
Yes. So first, I don't know exactly what happened. I heard that the team behind it said that Twitch auto-banned it or something because of that joke.
What?
But then afterwards, it wasn't 100% clear if it was Twitch or they just... Hey, it was really, really that sensitive, this joke, that it made the entire cast kind of disappear. So if people want to rewatch that day, they can't on Twitch.
That's terrible. I think it's bad that we can't see it, but I don't blame Nili for it. His joke wasn't that it's not like laughing with somebody who has a disease or anything. Those are generally things that are being criticized internationally. And yeah, okay. If you can't even joke about it in that manner, okay.
I thought this other joke was actually more edgy, maybe. I don't know if you heard that one.
Which one was it? Is our podcast going to get banned from if you repeat his jokes?
We can cut this part if necessary. I think he was casting something like with doubt or something, and he was saying something like someone had a great economy going, and it was something like what's the end? It was something
Cyber
like
economy or something.
No, yeah, it was something like, hey, I know you're Serbian, but this is what the real
That's what an economy looks like. Yeah, but Doubt left with this as well. I think, yeah, but that's Nilly's style. If you invite Nilly, he will always, he's a German. So Germans aren't really known for their sensitivity and subtlety. They're efficient and they're also quite to the point, harsh.
Confrontational, I would say.
Yeah, confrontational, but he's not, I think, he wasn't that, like, it's not toxic at all what he said. It's no. And he didn't go too far in it. He just mentions something as a joke, and then I think we can leave it at that. It's still Age of Empires, you know?
I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I like Nilly. But he has a reputation also of, like, with the Hera drama last summer, it's something that can happen. Like, Nilly can sometimes say things in the moment, which... Yeah, whatever.
Now, well, congratulations to Hera in any case.
Yeah.
Actually, it's his first big S-tier tournament win in 2022, just before the end of the year. So if anybody's interested, he recently released his overview of the tournament on YouTube. So a video where he goes over the tournament and how he felt in his matches and just overall things behind the scenes stuff. So yeah, it's quite interesting if you're interested in that. But yeah, nice tournament. I hope they do another one like this. I like the mixed online and LAN setup. But just as we discussed, like the difficulty with that is the timing, right? I mean, you have to play it short to the ball in order to have people be able to go and not have too much hype. So is there anything coming up, any tournaments we should watch out for?
Yes. This podcast will release in January, and the current ongoing event will be the T90 Titans League, the Platinum Edition, so the S-tier bracket of it, which will be going on from the 2nd of January until the 5th of February. So typical for T90, it's like an ongoing event. A lot of his games will be on the YouTube channel, his secondary YouTube channel, or live at his Facebook. And for him, I think it's open streaming, so other casters can also cast games.
So no Spanish revolution in the chat this time?
I would hope not. And a remark about it, they have included Nomad now in the map pool for TTL. So
interesting.
Looking forward to seeing those Portuguese, how they do there, and other stuffs as well, of course.
Well, we'll definitely discuss it on our next episode.
Yeah.
Then let's move on. The talk of the show. Let's hit it.
Talk of the show.
Welcome, listeners, to the Talk of the Show. In this second segment of the podcast, we have selected a main topic which we want to discuss. And for this episode, this is how to get good in Age of Empires 2. Because it seems, no matter how long you play this game, whether or not it's just a childhood game you just picked back up, or you've been playing it for years, somehow it seems like you're still bad at this game. And first of all, we feel exactly the same way. So, in spite of that, we want to discuss what you can do to do something about this feeling. Am I right, Kirst?
Exactly. I think we can all learn a lot. And the road to starting out, to becoming somewhat decent, is a long one. And I think we can discuss our journey and what we recommend new players to follow and try out, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think this is a good goal to set for yourself, listener. Somewhat decent, I think, Kirst, but a very good description.
Yes, so being able to defeat all your casual friends that still remember this game as like, oh yeah, we used to play it, let's play it again, and you just destroy them. That means you're semi-decent,
For sure.
One thing before, if I sound different, is because I'm on babysitting duties, parenting. I don't know if it's called babysitting then, if it's your own child, but so I am recording it in a different environment. So if I sound different, that's the reason why.
Okay. Well, first of all, maybe we will focus on people who just picked up the game again. Maybe you've played it as a kid. I know it was the same thing for me. I watched some videos online, saw the game was still there, and picked it back up. Maybe some of your friends played it, talked to you about it. Maybe during COVID you picked it back up. So maybe let's just focus on this first. Players who are either completely new or who haven't played in a long time.
Yes. So one of the things you can start with is, of course, the campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think they're a very fun way of getting back into it. They tell you a story. They challenge you in different ways. To be truthful, I played the hell out of them when I was younger. But since coming back, I really haven't tried any of the new ones, even though I've heard interesting things about them. But still, it's there for those who are interested in history. So want to have a more casual, fun environment to start off.
Mm-hmm.
One of the main ones is the Learn to Play campaign, the William Wallace one. It's very, very basic, if I recall, like teaching you how to select units, how to move them, the start of like building a base and building an army. But actually, I remember having a lot of fun, especially in the last scenario, because you could really like build up an army, and I don't know, somehow the William Wallace like vibe of defeating the evil British kind of really talked to me when I was younger. So I always had a lot of fun with this campaign in the end of it. Did you have similar feelings?
For me, it's one of my favorite campaigns because I've played it the most. It's very easy to get into. And then gradually, it are short scenarios as well. So the other campaigns, sometimes if you start a mission, you can strap in for like an hour or two, or at least.
Barbarossa, first one.
But these campaigns, they're quite short and straightforward. And as you said, in the final game, it's more of a standard game. You start in like with a bit of a base, and your enemy has a base, and you need to just destroy their castle. And then there's a few triggers there and a few things that happen. But you basically have to implement all that you've learned in the previous scenarios to get your win in this game. And once you've done this, you have a basic feeling about what this game actually is. That doesn't mean you're good, but it means that you know what it's about.
Yeah, indeed. How to defeat the British is a valuable skill in any level of Age of Empires play.
And as you said, playing the campaigns as a kid, I've done the same. I've really had a lot of fun with it. And I know that the majority of people who are actually playing Age of Empires are just playing offline, playing campaigns. But what I would say to our listeners is, for me, it was the case that once I got competitive, I no longer could have fun with campaigns. It's something about it that it's a different game. It's really long, really slow. And once you really get a feel for the competitive AOE, which is magnificent on its own, the campaigns just aren't that fun anymore. At least that was the case for me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, exactly. I think you start to see the limits of the AI and like how they kind of cheat resources, how their composition is kind of stupid, and how you can abuse how they handle their battles. Sometimes I remember playing skirmishes when I wanted to get better, playing against the AI, the normal one.
Yeah.
I started at like maybe moderate difficulty, working myself up to the harder levels.
Mm-hmm.
But there were some things you could do. Like I remember building a tower at some wood lines, could kind of bug out the AI. So they were like, I'm going to attack the tower or not, or you know what I mean? Or they would send all of their villagers one by one to try and take it down. And you start to feel like, okay, if you want to cheese the AI, it's really easy.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of defeats the purpose, because sometimes you'll be like, no, I'm not going to use these strategies. I'm going to do a fair battle against this hard AI. Then you start losing and you're like, I don't really want to lose. So then you do, in the end, you do cheat a bit. So, yeah, I don't know. For me, it's a good place to start, just to get a handle of the basics.
Yeah.
I think the second point you put here is more important, is like, you can do this kind of things, but importantly, you should learn how to use hotkeys while you're doing it. Because those are like a perfect situation to train, because the AI is not putting too much pressure on you. And just getting used to hotkeys is really important if you want to play at a higher level.
Yeah. And I think when we go into the hotkeys, we have a different system. When I started playing Age of Empires, it was already on Age of Empires 2 DE. And the standard hotkey programmation is a grid system, which means that whatever you see on the units, for army units, it's the stances and patrol and all these things, they correspond to your keyboard. So meaning that for a villager, like Q is build, W is the build army buildings, you know what I mean? You have like the menu you see, and your keyboard always corresponds to it. So whether it's for building options, for army stances, and I've got used to it, and it's quite intuitive once you have it. It's based on what you see, and it's always the same. So that's easy to jump into. But the way I feel now is, once you've gotten to a certain level and you've gotten used to these settings, for full control, sometimes you don't need every hotkey and you just want the ones you need a lot closer. Then a custom programmation might be more interesting. And I think you play with a more custom programmation because you started playing on HD, right?
Yeah, exactly. When I started, I remember loading up HD, having a difficult time finding games, but still managing somehow. And then discovering that actually everybody was playing on Voobly. I think this was around the time they released the African Kingdoms expansion, maybe a bit after. I don't remember exactly. I think it was around 2017. And so I started playing on Voobly. But I heard about these hotkeys. But what I used to do was I had a very, very simple hotkey setup, which was literally, I had one button, go to town center, one button, build a ville, and then one other button, build a farm. And those were the only 3 hotkeys that I used. And to be honest, these are the most important ones.
Yeah.
Because you could just be able to queue villas, build farms easily, and all the rest I was just clicking like normal. Then I transitioned into, I guess, something a bit more, actually, I think I just kind of improvised it myself. But in the end, after learning how to play with those hotkeys for a long time, there were still a lot of things that I didn't incorporate. Like building certain units automatically, going to all barracks, going to all, these are the things that if you want to go really higher levels, you will need to have in your setup. So I just kind of went tabula rasa. I completely restarted my hotkey setup, following like a guide from Nili, and just making small adjustments. And that was really difficult, because if you're playing for a couple of years with certain hotkeys, relearning those are very tough. But what I actually can recommend is that there are some custom scenarios that you can find in the Steam workshop that really train you to build units or buildings, train your hotkeys. So it's like a kind of challenge, like a speed challenge, where they say like, build an archery range. So you see like an archery range appear, and you need to build one as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And when you build it, it switches to a stable. You go to the button stable. So in the beginning, you're like messing around. What's the button again? But because you're training yourself and you can do easy, normal, difficult, you get like a rating at the end of like, oh, you managed to build this many things in 1 minute. Great job. Or, and if you start doing that after a while, you don't have to do it for hours because it's boring. But I like the challenge of beating my own record.
Yeah.
And then actually it really does help. Now I have hotkeys for monastery, for building monks, for random things that I didn't have before, and I feel like I can control my game a lot better. I don't know if you did any training, or
no.
Have you changed your hotkeys at all since the beginning?
Well, First of all, I think what you do, it's like instant build, right? You press one button and you immediately have the stable.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the downside immediately of what I use, the grid system, which was build, then the building, So Q is build, Q is house, which is accessible, but then the downside is it takes more actions to actually accomplish what you need. But I've gotten used to it and I haven't changed the basic system of it. So it's still, I keep the grid for my building and my unit control. What I have added to my arsenal, let's say, along the way is like a go-to market, because sometimes you just need to
of course.
Yeah, but I didn't have it and I always needed to look for my market in game. Like I need an important upgrade, it's really urgent because I'm being pressured and I can't find my market, Or
this explains why you're such a market abuser. you have a market go-to. I don't have a go-to market button. That maybe explains why I don't abuse the market as you do.
Yeah. So I have a go-to-market one. That's a very important one for me. I have a select all TCs because, as you said, I use H to go to TC and then Q is to queue a fill. And this is very good. I did that for 2 years, I think, the first 2 years. But now for the later stages of the game, I don't want to press H because it brings me back to my TC, first of all. So once I'm raiding, I just want to be focusing on the fight and queuing vills at the same time. Also, it immediately selects all my TCs, so I don't need to cycle all the way through. So it's just a faster way. Plus, if you select all TCs and you press like age up or tech, whatever TC will be able to do it first, will select it first. So that's also a good system to like manage it.
Did not know that.
So this is a good one in my opinion. And I have a select all army one I use a lot. Basically at the start of the game to control my scouts or like my raiding units, and end game, just because the idle military, sometimes you have like military attacking a house or something and it's not idle, or like patrolling somewhere, it's also not idle. So just a way to control an idle fills, idle military, all idle vills, all idle military. Those hotkeys I use a lot.
I just wanted to summarize maybe for the starting player who's listening, going a bit too much in depth about certain aspects. If you start the game and you are looking to improve, I would recommend adding a couple of hotkeys, like we said.
Yeah.
Go to TC, build a vill, maybe build a farm.
And a house, maybe. That's also a thing you do a lot.
Great one, build a house. And then, honestly, what I did also, I forgot to mention, like you said, I had scrolled down on my mouse, being select all idle or go to idle vill, so that I could find idle villagers, so villagers that are not working, and put them back to work. And also scroll up would be, like you said, idle military.
Yeah.
So with just those things, you can do a lot. You can really get to some level on the competitive ladder if that's what you're looking to do. We'll talk about it later. But that's what I would recommend if you're just starting out. Now, one other aspect, of course, is not just the hotkeys. The hotkeys let you control the game, but there's also the strategy, right? So as we didn't have this available, at least not I didn't have this available when I started, but now they have this, I would say, challenges called the Art of War.
Yeah.
Pen, can you describe a bit what they are?
So I think in your time there were like custom scenarios which taught you a bit of a build order or a bit of a unit counter system, and it's actually this implemented into the game. It's a scenario you can play, or scenarios you can play, and each one will teach you to focus on a certain aspect of the game. Basically, it's an updated learn to play, but the learn to play for online playing, I would say. So once you want to start defeating the more difficult AI, like maybe a hard one, or if you want to jump online, do this first for sure. And you have one that teaches you how to focus on early economy, how to get to feudal, how to rush, how to go to castle age as soon as possible, how to destroy a castle, like all the basic aspects of the game, the proper competitive game, so not the campaign, not the casual, very long game style, but more of the game we play or the more competitive players play. That's something you can start with by playing the Art of War.
Wait, are you implying that you can fight before you reach Imperial Age with all the upgrades?
Yeah. Actually, Yes, and that's what the Art of War is all about, and just a competitive play. No, but it's not that high end. I think it gives you a medal at the end, depending on how you do. But also the unit counters it does. I forgot about that one. So like, you can counter archers with skirmishers.
We'll talk about that later, no? In the next part.
Yeah, but that's also in the Art of War.
Okay.
I mean, once you've started to learn to play, you've played a bit, and you want to play better. Start with the Art of War, and if you've done that, you can move on.
Now, what if one of our or some of our listeners really can't be bothered playing these challenges? They just want to jump in online. Can we give them any tips? Like, what are the basics of handling a game of Age of Empires that we can transmit to our listeners?
Yeah. So no matter how long you've been playing the game, what the matchup is, what map you're playing on, whatever goes on, there's a few basic things which always apply. So being able to execute them properly is needed, and the better you can do it, the better you will be as a player. First rule, and most important rule, is to have your town center create villagers at all times if possible. Avoid an idle town center, so that means try and get enough food to consistently produce villagers, and don't get housed.
That's the best part.
You know the rule of thumb to keep your TC producing vills?
Yes. You just don't forget making vill.
That's one, the hotkey. And maybe it's too easy, but it's like 6 villagers. Every build starts, or most builds starts with 6 villagers on food. That's because 6 villagers on food is what's needed to have a consistent villager production.
But see, this is where we might differ, because I've never been one that follows build orders. I mean,
You think I have?
maybe, I don't know if we want to discuss them here. Maybe.
Yeah, no.
But if you're like the kind of person who likes following a recipe, like exactly, you know what I mean? Like you weigh every ingredient to the milligram, then I would recommend looking up build orders. They're a bit like following a recipe of someone telling you how to build out your base, your economy, except that, of course, when it's really important, like what do you do when you're in situations that, after the start of the game, they don't really describe very well. So at that point, you're probably lost. So that's why I've always been more of I've play on feeling. I'm like, I think I don't have enough wood.
Yeah.
Let me send some vills to wood. I could like some stone right now. So I'm just kind of improvising or like kind of feeling the game, and that's how I play. I don't really think too much about how many vills do I have on food. Let me count. No, I don't look at that. I just feel it. I don't know how do you do it?
It's the same for me, but it is a fact that all build starts with 6 vills on food. And that's because if you would feel like you would only put 3 vills on sheep to start a game, your TC would go idle. That's just maths. So no matter if you play with a build or not, you will always start with at least 6 villagers on food normally.
Okay.
Your villagers are just the engine of your economy, so also avoid your vills going idle. That's why it's important to have like an idle vill hotkey. Just try and keep them working at all time and try to have as much as possible of them. Then, once you have the engine running for your economy, it's very important that you use your scout. Reason for this is, first of all, find the resources adjacent to your own town center, your own base. Second of all, to know what's going on with your opponent and to get a general feel of the map. For new players, it's important to just focus on scouting your own base, and then you have the auto-scout option if you really want it. Once you feel like you can, and I wouldn't wait too long with this because it's actually really important, you can manually scout once you've discovered your own resources and try and take a look at your opponent. See if he's going for an early barracks, that implies aggression, or if he's walling up, that might imply a more defensive game from him, just to know what you can expect. It's always better to know like 10 seconds in advance that you will be attacked, instead of just noticing once your vills start dying.
Right. Well, I would recommend to a beginner is while you're holding shift, you can click on the map and it creates these kind of flags. So that means the scout is going to run along the path, going from the flag to the next flag to the next flag. So you can just take your scout and create nice little circles that's become wider and wider around your base. And you keep doing that until you find your sheep. In most maps, there are some sheep that you can find. Also, you want to look out for the boar, which is this scary-ass creature that can give you a lot of food if you manage to lure it to your TC. The aspect of like scouting your enemy is something that's a bit more advanced. And honestly, I wouldn't worry too much about it in the beginning. I would prefer to use my scouts to make sure I know the layout of my base and then make sure I can see when enemies arrive. That gives you a bit more time to react. So, I mean, it's important for sure. Scouting your enemy is also dangerous because I have the feeling that wherever you click in the darkness, your scout is always going to go to their TC. It's like a magnet that pulls on your scout. And there's nothing less more demotivating than having that scout dead under the Dark Age TC. So that's what I would recommend.
In my opinion, a dead scout is better than a passive one, but it's definitely dangerous to go out scouting if you don't have the attention to follow up with your scouts. So that's why I would say the auto scout option is always there for newer players. Second aspect, once you've scouted your base, as you say, the layout of the map could be to start walling up your base, which is always something nice you can do. Walling secures your economy, the engine of your play, let's say. It's not without risk because you invest some time and resources in it, and if you fail to fully wall your base, then you are still practically defenseless. So it's something to start doing as soon as you can. You can integrate some buildings in it. Maybe, Kirst, you have some pointers for the Waller boys here?
Well, actually, I would say that I would not recommend walling if you're a beginner.
Why?
First off, it's going to take you a lot of time with different villagers to build the walls, that takes valuable time away that they could be gathering resources, which you need as much as you can when you're a beginner. Secondly, when you're walling, there's this rule, there's always a hole. I don't know if you've heard this rule.
Yeah.
There's always maybe a part you didn't scout of your base where you thought the wood goes to the edge of the map. Well, maybe there's a small hole or whatever, maybe you just missed the spot. And then what happens is your enemy scouts or whatever, they enter your base, and all the time and effort you put, all the wasted resources that you put into walling are for nothing. And the scouts are going to harass you anyway, and you panic because you thought you were safe. So what I would say if you're a beginner, do not wall. Just don't do it. You don't need walls. You will learn much better if you just do maybe a little bit of walling. And with that, I mean, there's a difference between full wall, which is a lot of effort, checking if there's no holes, looking where you want to put your walls. Maybe you build it too small and then you don't have enough space. Maybe you build it too large and then, the villain that's building the wall, it's too slow and he gets attacked by the scouts and you don't have any walls anyway. So I would say build small walls in good locations, but don't full wall. Instead, go for the spearmen. Just build a couple of spearmen, 2, 3, whatever, and put them, one next to your lumber camp, chilling. Like that, if the scouts arrive, just engage. Use your vills, use your spearmen. Don't run too far after your enemy, but just engage. If your enemy is at your level, he's not going to keep microing his scouts, and if he does, he's probably suffering at home. So in a way, that's just better to defend with a couple of spears and just, chill. Take it easy. Don't freak out. You have the answer. So that's my advice. Don't full wall at the lower levels.
Yeah. I'm not completely sure I agree, but I agree up to a point. I would say full walling is a big investment and still can give you a false sense of security. And knowing the unit counters and just having military is always way better. Attacking is even better than having to defend, especially early on if you're not sure about how the matchup will go. However, you should keep in mind that making spearmen costs food and wood, which are needed for your economy. And they are not that strong in Feudal Age. 3 scouts can already defeat 1 spearman without upgrades. So if you put 1 spearman on your gold, 1 spearman on your woodline, 1 spearman on the other woodline, if you need to like cover all the vulnerable spots, you would need at least 2 spearmen at each spot to make it effectively. And I don't know if new players can use their army always very efficiently in separate places.
I guess that's true, but you have to imagine that the opponent is of similar level, eh? So he's also not going to be able to micro the scouts perfectly. Indeed, 1 spearman doesn't beat 3 scouts, but he doesn't need to. If the scouts engage, you just keep the spearman, you hug your villagers. Your spearman loves his villagers, and when he comes in, you attack with the vills as well. And that makes a huge difference, because then maybe the scouts kill the spear, but now they're wounded.
Mm-hmm.
And now if he wants to engage, you just hit with your vills and you kill the scouts, and he just can't do anything with them anymore.
So it's actually better if his scouts target your villagers, I would say, for you in this particular engagement.
Yeah, I think so too.
But what you said, walling where it's effectively is always a good thing if you see 2 wood lines can be easily connected. And also you don't need to invest that much into it. A palisade wall isn't that strong, but you need to build houses anyway. You might want to build a barracks, a blacksmith, a market. And that's a good rule of thumb. You could see new players, sometimes they build their houses like in boxes, you know what I mean? Like they're all next to each other, like 4 houses in a square. I used to do it before. I even used to build streets for my city, you know? But now, and it should just be like a natural thing for you, or become a natural thing for you, to just build buildings you're going to build anyway, to construct a natural wall. If you do it like this, and you start making it a habit, I feel like without really making the effort of walling, you will automatically have some secure spots, which makes it more easy also to put the spearmen in the right spots, because you will only have 2 or 3 vulnerable spots and the others will be walled naturally.
Now, one other thing I would remark is that sometimes you will see the pros build their walls kind of towards the TC. Like the TC is Rome and all roads lead to it. But the thing is that in high level play, you know, if the scouts would run past the TC and they get hit a little bit, that's like a big deal. Now, what I would say is that at lower elos, first, the reaction time is much slower. So if your opponents just send the scouts through the TC, you might not even be able to react fast enough to do much damage. So I would be careful to rely too much on walling just towards the TC and thinking that scouts cannot run through it.
And I think with watching pros, that some habits might be like copied without you knowing really why they are. Like a pro walling towards its TC, usually the pros, they're also very good at placing walls very quickly in a moment of need. So what they would do is, if the scouts run through towards the woodline, they would wall in the woodline really quickly, and the scouts will take damage without getting any merit in this engagement. But the chances of you being able to wall out your woodline last moment are very, very slim. Also, like not walling at all. You can see some pros not walling at all. If they don't think archers will come, but they suspect men-at-arms or scouts, they will go for like the really, really minimal walls, because they will just quick wall everything. And that's also something you can't get away with at let's say, mortal level of Age of Empires.
And if you can, we'll applaud you for it.
Yeah.
Again, you might see some of the pros pushing in their deer at the beginning of the game. So that means that they are using their scout to move close to the deer, which runs away in panic. Like, oh, horse. Or maybe, anyway, it runs away in panic, and you're trying to aim the deer towards your TC. Now, not all deer patches, we call them patches, is the group of deer, are close to your TC. Sometimes you have to lure them or push them from quite far. And the thing is that deer can be quite, wild. They don't always like to listen to you. So sometimes they're going to run away in a direction you don't want them to, or they're going to just move back to the original starting point.
Instantly.
You're losing a lot of time on it. So you're probably going to lose a villager that was trying to lure a boar. You might not build some villas because you're so focused on this. So I would say at the beginning, only push deer if they're very close and you feel that you are able to not, miss out on important things while you're doing it. Because even I had a lot of losses in the past due to pushing a deer That's what I would say to beginners.
And also know why you're doing it. You're doing it to really boost your economy, but it's a very greedy thing to do. You are not scouting, you are putting your attention there, so you're not really seeing if villagers go idle, if you're almost housed.
I thought we just pushed deer because the Vils were tired of eating sheep and they wanted something different in their menu. We're going to strike if you don't give us another food source. Now, moving on.
Yeah.
Counter units, I mean, I don't think we need to discuss it too much. I think you will learn by just playing which units are good against which units. And it's a long, let's say, detailed topic to go into, I think, at this point. But just know that some units are good against other units.
What I would advise people is just, if you're unfamiliar with a civ or a unit, check the tech tree. Usually you will find the basic information there. Most unit counters will be in the Art of War, which you should have already done when you're trying to master the basics. It's a big game. If you don't really know what's up, afterwards you can look up the unit and just gradually expand your knowledge.
Exactly. Now for raiding. So raiding is the act of sending a couple of units towards your enemy's base and just kind of trying to get some chip damage in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not going to destroy him completely, but if you do it enough, you're going to slow him down, you're going to annoy him, you're going to pick up some Vils, and eventually you might be able to make him fall over. But one thing I would advise if you're a beginner is actually do not micro your units too much. It's easy to be like, oh, I do not want to lose my scout or my knight, for example. I'm going to like keep watching him and like, oh no, they're attacking, run away, run there, run there. But in the end, because you're paying too much attention, that means you're going to have your economy not fully functioning. So what I would say is, don't do this. Click your knights towards his woodline and just do something else. Look at your economy, maybe build another knight, you know. And then when you see like, it's been a while, let's check up what he's doing. Oh, okay, he's being attacked. I'm going to run away. But don't spend too much time on it. One last tip I would also give is, if your opponent is like kind of dealing with the knights, like by reacting to it or the scouts, send them away, just a bit away from their opponent's base, and just wait. And then after a couple of minutes, maybe send them again and see if you can catch them unaware, you know? You don't need to constantly micro them. You can just kind of park them out of sight, do something else, and then come back and send them back again into the woodline or into whatever. And it can be really tilting.
Yeah.
Do you have any other tips?
Well, I think it's funny because I'm imagining like I'm a new player and listening to you, and it's already very much information and also very contradicting as I'm getting, because they're both, what you said is all true, but we are both giving you the advice to not spend too much attention towards your raid, but also if you see your raid is being countered, to move your army away, and then, and that's just what Age of Empires is. And I feel like it's maybe one of the reasons why we all feel like we're so bad at this, because you need to manage everything at once. You cannot. So you need to know what things you do have to manage and what things you can just
let go of. Yeah.
And then your raid is never your main focus. I do feel like if you're a new player, you should know what a raid is, and you should know if your enemy raids you, why they're doing it, and what the effect of it is. Killing villagers is the biggest effect a raid can have, but early game, usually it's just meant to distract you. Mm-hmm. If you are trying like a build order, it's meant to disturb that build order. It's meant to make you panic and to make you focus on the execution of your macro instead of just gradually going into the composition that you would like. Endgame raiding is a different thing. It's like when you have two big armies fighting each other, and a lot of new players can get tunnel visioned in it. Mobile units like scouts or Huzzah in the later stages of the game, they are very good at just running into the enemy base, and then you don't look at it at all. And they are just killing villagers. And sometimes even if you are losing all battles, raiding can win you the war because you are gradually taking away the villagers and taking out the engine of your opponent. So that's both what raiding is a bit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like a lot of new players can have the habit of staying at home and staying at home very long, but they don't recognize they actually have a window of opportunity to really push their opponent, or it's hard to recognize when it is.
I think the best thing to do is just make sure that the town that's under siege, you cut off the water supply, you starve them out over winter, and you just keep chugging, maybe threatening messages over the walls until they just give up, right?
Like,
That's a siege.
Yeah, or like cows and chickens, you just throw them over the... Yeah.
Right. Wait, no, they'll feed on them. That's a bad idea.
Yeah, but it's also like taunting, Yeah.
Okay.
Or they're
No, but-
diseased. Yeah.
Pushing. Yeah, the thing with pushing is you want to include something that can destroy buildings. Otherwise, you're just wasting everybody's time, and they're just going to have waves of units killing each other over and over again. You want to destroy their castles, their defensive buildings, and also their production. If you can kill their stables, their barracks, their archery ranges, then they can't make more units, so eventually you'll be able to kill them. So think about adding siege to your attacks.
I would add to this that, like, generally, if you've mastered a lot of the things, you've gone to feudal, you've done some minor engagements, if you feel like you're the player ahead, there's two options you have. You either go full on the economy, or you go towards the aggression. If you're behind, it's almost never an option to start booming unless your opponent is worse than you. But if you're on level with your opponent, you should keep in mind that if they're first to Castle Age and they're booming, you will always be behind. That's an important thing to keep in mind. So then you really have to start pushing. And the way is, like you said, you need to make an army, but you need to add siege to it. So either rams or mangonels, and take out buildings. Now, the way to stop a push is usually by building a castle, which secures the entire area. And then it becomes a game of going up to Imperial first, or finding the weak spots. Maybe you can even drop a castle of your own at the base of your opponent. Those are all the most common techniques of, like, really pressuring and pushing your opponent's base. But the most important reason why I wanted to put it here is because I feel like a lot of new players don't even consider pushing their opponents, which is the reason why they lose a lot of games.
Exactly.
So recognize when you really have to do it and then start practicing it.
Okay, so Pen, you've managed to beat not only the normal AI, but also the moderate and maybe even the hard AI. You're ready to click that button, multiplayer.
Yeah.
What do? Do you join a custom lobby, or do you just jump into the ranked queue? What is the difference between them, and what should a beginner choose?
Yeah. First of all, it's always up to the player. If you don't mind, I would say you can always jump into ranked. But I think later on we will talk about becoming competitive at online play, and that will focus more on the ranked. I would say most players that just click going online for the first time, they just want to have fun. And for them, having fun means not stressing too much about what they do. If you play the AI, I would say most people prefer to win, probably because they're used to it from playing the AI. And that's something you should keep in mind. When you go online, you will not likely win most of your games. At best, it will be somewhere near 50-50 for most players. But don't expect to win like 9 out of 10 times the way it is with the AI you've started beating consistently.
Exactly. Now, the thing that I like to do is indeed the lobby games, especially the team games, is something that I really like to... It's actually how I started playing when I get online. I was joining lobby games, team games, mainly because the pressure is, for me, less intense. Like, when I do a 1 versus 1, you have this one opponent, you have nobody backing you up, it's all on you. So, and it's quite aggressive. While if you join, especially the 4 versus 4 format, which is the biggest number of players in one game, you can sometimes get away with kind of being quiet on yourself, let the big boys do the battle, and maybe contribute here and there. And most importantly, after the game is over, or maybe even during the game, you can observe your allies, or sometimes even your enemies. And that's how I learned a lot of things. For example, I remember always struggling to keep up with my opponent's army until I noticed that, I was going 2, maybe 3 stables, while I saw my opponent having 11 of them
Mm-hmm.
sometimes in these multiplayer games. So then it makes sense that I couldn't overwhelm him. And it's things like that. You gradually get a sense of how to play these scenarios where you have big armies, late game, you know. I think you learn it much better there than in 1v1. And also I have the feeling that lately almost all of the lobbies are noob games because I have difficulty finding any game I can play in.
Yeah, and then it's the discussion like, what's a noob? If you've been playing for 2 years, are you still a noob? Because we have an elo system which rates people, but a lot of people aren't rated at all. So there's it's very hard to distinguish like the more capable to the more helpless players, let's say. But the thing to keep in mind when you go online is just to have fun. Be prepared to lose, be prepared to have fun. Usually the community is very warm and lighthearted. Sometimes you can get some toxic people online, as in every game, but mostly people will just give you advice after a game, welcome you into the lobby, and you can just have fun with each other.
Yeah, it's really true. I love that when my opponent or me discuss the strategy we did there at the end of the game. Sometimes you really have people doing a mini analysis of the game and kind of discuss what was the mistake he made or the mistake you made, and in a positive way, and that's something that's really interesting.
Yeah.
One last tip is if you ever find yourself in a lobby full of unranked Vietnamese players, you're going to die. Like their level is like insane for most of the time, in my experience.
Yeah, Vietnamese, they have the alphabet we have, right? Or don't they?
I don't think so.
Whenever I see characters I don't understand, I always know, like, okay, I'm gonna get wrecked. it's always
is that xenophobic? I'm not sure.
No, it's just based on my experience, and but actually it is like phobic. Yeah, it's a phobia. I have a phobia for people with nicknames I can't read. Yeah.
Okay, wait. Let me just change my name.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've played a lot of lobby games and you got that itch to become competitive, you know?
Yeah.
You see the ranked ladder awaiting you. So how does it start? How does it know your level if you've never played ranked?
The system is like comparable to what chess has, which is an elo system, which always gives you a score based on the average of players. The average should be around 1,000. It's not really true because we've had a lot of people like dropping off from the game. There's a lot of factors that don't really add up. So I think right now it's a bit inflated, so it's a bit over 1,000, the average. But that should give you an idea about where the average player is. And keep in mind that those are the competitive players that choose to play ranked. So most of the players don't play online at all. Then you have a big community playing only the lobby games. And then the people that actually say, I want to be competitive, they are on the ranked matchmaking normally. So if you're a new player, I would say be prepared to lose a few matches because you will start at 1,000 elo and you will need to work your way down before you can start working your way up.
Yeah. You gotta start from the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Well, not really. You start from the middle, and then you need to first go to the bottom by losing, and then you can start from the bottom working your way. Yeah,
I want to bring in my old man memories.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I said, I started playing when DE wasn't out yet. And on Voobly, they had a similar elo system.
Yeah.
But I think it counted every match, you know. There was no ranked or not ranked, I think. And somehow, I think because of team games and other things, I managed to get about like 1,700 to 1,800 elo, which sounds like a lot, but it doesn't translate to DE. You know, it doesn't mean that it's the same in Definitive Edition. So when I started, I actually won most of my games, but then I settled at a lower elo. But yeah, I don't know why I put this up actually. Just a humble brag.
You just want to say like, oh, not for me. I didn't go down before I went up. Exactly. I just went straight up. Why. Yeah, okay. Well, for me, I went down. I think I started at 800 elo, and then I started going up again.
Wow, seriously? How was it at the bottom?
I'm not sure if 800 is the bottom, because I had already, like, watched a lot of content online. I knew how to lure a boar. I knew like a lot of the basic things, like we said, like what you need to master first. I had played online a bit. I think you just cannot underestimate, like a lot of times we think like, oh, under 1,000, you must be a total noob. I don't feel like that's actually the case. I think it's just like consistency, being faster, being better, having more knowledge. But it's whenever you play ranked, I think it will be competitive. Maybe not if you go too far under 1,000, then the games might look more like a lobby game.
You said that you watched some things on YouTube, I guess. So what kind of things did you watch? Can you recommend some of these things to a beginner?
Yeah. So for me, I just found Age of Empires. It was my childhood game, so I started watching it. It was through T90, and first it were like the fun games, like the Regicide Rumble, Diplo games, and that's what got me hooked. But then I started thinking like, oh, they're still playing this, so you get, YouTube gives you more content. And once I decided like, I'm gonna buy this game, I started looking up like, how do you start on Age of Empires? And there's a lot of good guides, like Spirit of the Law was a very important content creator for me when I got into the game, because for every civilization he has an overview video which is like 5 to 10 minutes and telling you what the civilization looks like. He also had a build order for your first 15 villagers and what they should do, which is not really a build order but more like a very broad way to start up your economy, and after which you can take it any direction you want. And those are the things I like had in mind.
Okay.
Yeah. And just in general, I watched a lot of videos just for fun, like a lot of T90 official, I think. And yeah, it's not really like a video to train you or to prepare you, but just naturally you pick up on a lot of information and things.
It's fun because I think I started exactly the same way.
Yeah.
I was like watching Twitch one day and I saw Age of Empires and I was like, oh, this game is still going, still being played.
Yeah.
And I watched T90's crazy diplomacy games with ridiculous settings, like King of the Hill or whatever. And that's actually how I really got into it. And I remember at the time, it was my very first Twitch subscription was to T90.
Nice.
When he was still working full-time in a shoe shop, selling shoes. And he was not yet full-time on Twitch and he wanted to make the jump. I was asking for support. But yeah, I think...
So in a way, you kickstarted his career.
Yeah, he has it all to thank on my $5 donation. I don't think I even stayed subscribed for more than a couple of months.
Still.
But I think indeed from those kind of fun videos, you quickly get a taste of it. Mm-hmm. And then the tournament scene is something that's really, really important for learning like the competitive basics. But just have fun with it in the beginning.
Yeah.
It just don't matter what you watch. If you're watching Age of Empires, you're probably learning a lot.
Yeah. And probably if you enjoy watching competitive games, you are also the person that would love to be competitive yourself just because you like the challenge of it and a bit, you like the grind a bit because that's something unavoidable. It's always a grind to get better at this game.
Now, one thing you can also look at is your own games. Like the new technology, Capture Age is included in the game. Mm-hmm. You can actually reload your own games and have a look what your opponent did, how you reacted. You can rewatch your own game and maybe at a faster speed. And actually, a thing that we like to do, me and you, Pen, is cast each other's games.
Yeah.
Like on Twitch, give critique and comment each other's games. And actually, I really like that as well because you learn a lot from each other's commentary. So if you can find someone that wants to do that for you or a friend, you can do it to each other. It's really nice and as well, no?
It doesn't really have to be someone that's much better than you. It can even be someone who is even at a lower rating than you are. It's just the fact that someone else is looking at your play. They have a completely different view on it, and they can like mark out things that you don't see, like your own blind spots, your own weaknesses. Their thought process challenges yours. It's always very helpful.
Yeah. Even though it may not be as helpful for the higher level player, it's still nice for them to, give up some of their time to help the lower elo player in this. I think that's very nice.
Yeah. And I think unless you're like approaching 2000 elo, there's always a lot of things we all do wrong. That doesn't mean that everyone can point them out, but there's just so much to see in your own play that you could improve on. And it's not always clear to you why you lose games. If that's the case, you're not always sure, like, how come my opponent is just faster to the units?
Yeah, exactly. Like, not taking the first farming upgrade, right? Can really lose you a lot of
things
games.
like this. Well, I point this out with you because to me, when I'm really starting to build up the farms, I love to get horse color first. Just because I know that each time I hit castle age, otherwise I have wood problems at a certain point. You don't really need to take every advice to heart, but it's just a way to add towards your own thought process. What I would also say is, like, in my opinion, for my own improvement, it's just based on my own experience. I think 70% of my improvement in Age of Empires did not come from playing the game, but came from just preparation in general, which means looking at games, talking about it, looking things up, absorbing stuff about the game, and then the other 30% is just practicing the execution and doing it yourself. But because it's such an complicated strategy game with so much information and so much things to think of, just by playing the game you will never reach the level that has been established at this time.
I think for me it was mainly just hate like not liking when I lose, especially in team games.
Yeah.
If my opponent somehow is this insane player, I would see what he did and I would be like, okay, next time I'm doing the same thing. And like slowly trying to, do similar things and then try to get good at the game. But the game is so complex in a way you can learn everything about one specific type of map or game and be a complete beginner in other types, So I would think in general it's not a fast process. It's going to be gradual.
Yeah, very much
you
so.
You learn slowly, how to adapt, how to play different type of maps. I don't know if you would recommend a beginner to hyper focus on one type of map, playing one type of civilization, or is it better to go for the more random approach where you just get something new every game? What do you think is best?
First of all, if you want a good rank, then forget about a rank. Like, if you want to be competitive and you want to get good at the game and get a good rank, then be prepared to lose, and any rank you drop, you can go back up. Why I say this is because it leads up to this. I think it's best that you start by focusing on a few things. Like, the same thing you start with the basic hotkeys and then you can improve on it later. You start with maybe like only calf civs or a certain civilization, which you practice a bit. And then you go further from there. But the reason why is only so that you can focus on a few things to get good at them. Not really to rise in rank. Let's say you start with the Franks, which is our Civ of the month.
Spoilers.
And you practice an opening where you go for scouts and knights and you start winning games with it. And you have like this thing where you practiced it, you repeated it, and it feels natural to you right now. I would say then it's time to challenge yourself and start with something completely new. And if you do it on the rank ladder, you will go down in elo. You still like have all the skills you've acquired by practicing the previous tactics, but don't spend too much time doing the same thing all over again. If you really want to improve, you need to become a versatile player who can adapt to a lot of situations. Which is the same reason why I don't like build orders. And I never, also because I'm lazy. And I can't stick to them. Once I've tried them and I always do something different. And then, I guess I'm not going for the build order after all. But I feel like players who do go for build orders can be stuck with their game plan. And that's also very bad and easy to exploit. Yeah, so if you want to become, in my opinion, a good player, you will need to be versatile and you can focus on certain things and grind it out until you have it like well established in your play and then go for something completely different.
One thing that I saw once was someone made like how can I say this? Like, well, we'll discuss this more in detail in another episode, but it's something called openings. So an opening is basically your first army. Are you gonna go for this unit, this age, that age? That's an opening. And there was a guy that kind of laid out, if you're at this level, try only learning one type of opening. Then as soon as you manage to do it well enough to increase to a certain level, then you switch, you learn another one. And then you go down a bit, but in the end you raise again. And when you're above this level of Elo, you learn another opening. And I thought it was an interesting idea to be like that focused on like learning a single opening, and then at the point starting mixing them, of course, and using different ones depending on other circumstances. It's not something, I mean, you would have to be quite disciplined, but I think it's interesting.
Yeah, and it depends a bit on the player, what I'm telling you right now, like practice this and then go to the next thing once you feel like you have it well established. Personally, I haven't done that too much. I had it a bit, but then once in a while I get bored of it easily. I don't follow a build order, so it's just, I have some favorite civs, and then I add a new favorite civ, and sometimes one of my favorite civs goes away. But it's not like I'm grinding on full, like I'm really grinding it. And I think that's the only way you will like keep up with it is if you have fun. So the moment it feels like a chore, I would say then don't do it, even if it's what we just advised you. If it feels like you're doing a chore, stop doing it and find another way. Just have fun.
Now, thinking about a chore is having to play a water map. That's quite a chore for me.
No.
I'm joking, but it's true in a way.
Yeah.
So when you're choosing, what maps you want to play, I think the ones that are most general are the open maps, something like Arabia. That's a good one to start because you're going to learn simple things, widely applicable things, and you're going to just get better in general. It's a competitive and aggressive map, so you have to learn a lot of basics. If you want to go into more closed maps and go for a full clown career, that's something you can do. There are like professional clowns in our community. And with that, I mean people who love the map Arena. So if you're more of this kind of guy, someone who loves solving Rubik cubes as fast as possible, then go for it, become an Arena clown. But I would recommend most people to indeed start with open maps and then experiment with clownery or other things.
Half of the maps you play are probably Arabia if you're playing ranked, because most people favorite it, just because it is very much standardized. It's a bit like a chessboard. It's very balanced, very clear, and it all, like the game is really about executing what your civ's good at or what your strategy is and adapting from there. While Arena, because of the security, it's usually a build or a strategy fully to the execution. So you macro your eco without adapting too much towards your opponent, and you go for like what you had envisioned. And the one who does it best is usually the aggressor or ahead. I think new players should play water maps. You can't fully ignore it. It's like a part of the game, at least the hybrid maps are. You could say I always ban islands, but then, I feel like you're missing out on a lot of fun as well if you never play water. But that's my opinion.
I just wanted to say, indeed, how are they going to get a match on islands? That's very, very tricky.
Yeah. But yeah, if you don't ban it, sometimes it's in a map pool and you could end up on islands. But water, in my opinion, resembles Arena a bit, except it's more predictable and more about execution. So it's just, on full water maps, it's usually about making army, using your army, rushing up to the upgrades, and it's very, very clear. So it's very predictable, but that's what makes it easy as well. And I would say I had success, like as a new player, I was better at islands, like Elo-wise. I won my matches on the island games and I lost on Arabia just because it is that predictable and you don't need to know as much. Or
so actually it's good for morale to every now and then wins the water map.
Yeah. Once you've mastered it, it's actually quite, I wouldn't say easier, because it's a lot about execution, and you can do some wacky things, especially on maps like Migration, but it's less complicated, let's say. It's a bit more straightforward what a water map does, like execution-wise as a player.
So you want to know what you're doing when you sail for the seas.
It's less than 10% of the matches are water maps, let's be honest. Yeah.
I was going to end this discussion about talking about, I think, something that will only arrive at a very, let's say, advanced level in a way. Like it's going to take you a lot of time to get to this point, and that's like your mindset. Like how can you cope with the information you're getting? How can you adapt your game and try to, win? Now, the thing is that for me, that's something that I've only been starting to do more recently, which is like really looking at what my opponent is doing and reacting, and sometimes predicting, feel like kind of sensing, I feel like he's going to go for this unit. I'm going to already go for this unit. In a way, I will try to stop him from, doing what he wants to do. And that only arrives at like after a lot of experience. This idea of like, I have a plan. Sometimes it's not being aggressive. It's making my economy bigger. Sometimes I feel like if I don't go full on aggressive now, I'm not going to be able to cope with this or that. So it's this kind of feeling. It's difficult to pinpoint exactly why you make the decision that you make. I think it's like based on really how you feel in the moment and your experience in situations. What do you think about this mindset issue?
I think I have a bit of a different experience than you. I'm not as good a player as you are, and I've been playing Age of Empires for the last 3 years, but I've been watching a lot, and like really what interests me most is like the civilizations and the little bonuses and what it does and like all these things. So for me, when I started playing, I felt like my strength was post-imp games. And the reason for it was that if I got to the point where I reached post-imp, I realized I was better than most of my opponents at seeing opportunities. Like when you're in a tunnel-visioned war, and a lot of times post-imp can beat us, like both people are fighting over a region, like thinking, okay, we're fighting here now, and I'm not really winning, I'm not really losing, like what do I do to win this? And I start raiding somewhere, or I add in a new unit, or I tech switch. Or the thing is, I used to mainly focus on myself, and as you get more experience, you also learn to look at what your opponent's doing and really not estimating or guessing, but really just seeing it, clicking a unit, clicking to see what upgrades they have, note and realizing like what you need to do, what's your win condition at this point, and to keep this in mind. Problem for me is I can't panic to get to the right mindset. I can't be focusing on execution. I can't be panicking. I can't stress out. Or the moment I'm playing and I'm stressed, I know that I don't have the mindset to win.
You need to be in a relaxed Zen attitude.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean that you need to be winning, but even if you're losing, you need to be able to keep your calm and to not feel like everything's going wrong, but just realize it's going wrong, adapting it, but also thinking at the same time, like not, oh, I need to leave this area with my villagers, and keeping in mind like, okay, he's attacking me here now. Is there any way I can do damage to him to like even up the odds or things like this, which is the correct mindset to really play good, I feel. And now I've been playing for a few years and I've gained so much knowledge about the game, making me able to decide things on the spot without too much thought process. Also, the controlling of my units has been automized a lot. I don't really need to think about it that much, which makes it possible for me to reach that correct mindset, not only in the post-imp games, but even before that, just because I'm not as preoccupied controlling everything. However, I still get stressed a lot, and then my mindset is completely off the table.
And I think it's interesting. Sometimes I get into indeed what you call a winning mindset, and it's difficult to describe. But sometimes I feel like a chef, or maybe how you call that? This guy that's for the orchestra.
I don't know the English word. Let's just say Chancellor Palpatine.
What? Yes, when I feel like Chancellor Palpatine, I know I'm gonna get the win. No, I just think like I get into the stage where I'm like, just like, okay, I'm gonna throw in a couple of this unit, you know? I'm like, just like, okay, deal with this, and I'm like already going to the next phase, and I'm like, sometimes I feel like I'm cooking, you know, like I'm throwing in recipes, and it's like, okay, you managed to get that, but how do you think of this one? And I throw in, you know, maybe some knights or whatever, and like, let's sprinkle a couple of archers. Boom, okay, let's mangonel, you know, and I just keep my opponent like on the edge, and I feel like in control. I feel like I'm the one that's making him react and making him doubt. Just and then I know that I can't lose when I'm in this mode. You know?
Yeah. And my favorite games are the games where I start playing, I start being attacked and stressing out, and I manage, in the moment of stress where I'm almost resigning, I manage to find my cool and to switch to the correct mindset and then use it to get ahead, because it's really a big thing. The reason why, I would say, is because Age of Empires is a game about execution, but it's also a game about recognizing your win condition. It's a strategy game. Some civilizations are very good at the early Castle Age or post-Imp or feudal. And if you know what civilization you have and your opponent has, which does require that you know the civilizations and you know the units. So first of all, you need a lot of experience and information to be like soaked up. But if you know these things and you can keep your cool, you can use it to your advantage and really know, like, in your matchup, based on the map, what it is you need to do. And yeah, that can make up for a lot of APM, a lot of build orders, in my opinion. And that's why I feel like a build order isn't as strong. It can get you like an elo boost or something if you do it properly. But the real winner or the really good players are the ones with a good mindset who use all the knowledge they have and their well-practiced execution so they can focus on the bigger questions, which is, what's my win condition and how do I get there safely?
Indeed, so a positive mindset is super important, but I'd also like to warn our listeners to a negative mindset, meaning the feeling that you made a small error, maybe in the beginning of the game, and you kind of decide that, you know, it's probably not worth keeping playing, like you're probably going to lose anyway. You know, the classic thing is losing a villager to a boar.
Yeah.
Like you're luring a boar, maybe you get distracted, you lose the vill, and you kind of get into this defeatist attitude of like, I'm behind the vill, doesn't matter what I do, I'm already dead. And to be honest, that doesn't matter that much at the lower levels. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like a small error in the beginning, okay, it's bad, but you can easily still win. I mean, I think it's just important that if you get into the attitude of like, oh, I'm behind, I'm going to lose, that's the thing that will lose you the game more than the vill, you know, that you lost. I don't know what you think about this.
I think they're related a bit. It's a bit of the mindset. You don't need to feel like I'm going to win this game anyway, but it needs to be your focus. And it's like focusing on the positives or on the negatives. I remember recently I saw the Viper play, and it was like he was being raided and took damage. And his reaction is like, I'm fine still. Well, things are going wrong in his base. And of course, he's a very competent player, and he is very confident because of this. But that's exactly the mindset you need to turn things around if things are going bad, and things will go bad. I feel like it's mostly by having your focus on the execution or on controlling of units, or really, if that's 80% of your focus, you are losing the strategy aspect of it and the win conditions. And you don't have the clear vision which you need to actually be a competitive or a successful competitive player.
And those wins are the sweetest wins, the ones where you already gave up and somehow you managed to fight your way back into a possible victory.
Yeah, much nicer than just breezing your way through. Or it's also not nice to just be stunned, but okay, it happens
if you learn from it.
yeah, and it's okay to have an off day. Yeah.
So in conclusion, what's our final takeaway to our listeners?
What I would just use to close off is that we've given you like an overview of steps you can follow, or like broad aspects, like if you're new and then if you move on. And just as you move on, it's all these things and you start mastering them better and better. But the main thing for me, which I would want to advise to people, is to just have fun, play the game, and don't care too much about ratings or about play. You can drop 100 elo in a day, but you can also rise 100 elo in a day. It doesn't matter that much. Just make sure you're having fun, and gradually you will improve.
And everybody knows that elo doesn't matter. It's all about your skill at 4v4 nomad games, right?
Yeah,
that's the main thing that's important.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay, well, then I guess we have only one more segment coming up, right? The Civ of the Month.
Yeah. And because the main topic today, or the talk of the show for this episode, was how to get good or getting started with competitive play, we've picked the Franks because we think it is a good Civ to start with, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, on to the next segment.
Civilization of the Month.
So uncivilized.
Welcome back, listeners, to the last segment of this podcast called Civ of the Month, in which each month we will be discussing a particular Civ. Now, to be honest, there are already very great resources out there. If you're interested in maybe the strategical aspect of the Civ, how to play it, the tech tree, I would recommend Spirit of the Laws YouTube videos, or even Hera's Spotlight. So in our segment, we are approaching it from a slightly different angle. We will be discussing the Civ of the Month through a historical lens, thinking about how the Civ's bonuses are actually founded and based on their real-life history. So, as the topic of the episode was beginners, how to get good at the game, we chose a Civ that is beginner-friendly. And that's how we ended up with the Franks. Let's get into it. First, the intro to history. So, unlike most of the medieval civs, the Franks were actually already known by the Romans as a Germanic barbarian tribe. One of their main leaders was a man called Clovis. I don't know if you're familiar with the name, Pen?
I'm familiar with the name. I'm thinking about the end of the Roman Empire somewhere.
Yes.
Like one of the barbarian, but I'm not sure about the actual facts. But you've read into it, right?
Exactly. Your intuition is perfect. Clovis was a Frankish chieftain that actually defeated one of the last remaining Roman armies in Gaul and united the Franks in the early year 500 and a bit. And he became the de facto ruler of Western Europe. Now, one thing that's always been kind of intriguing to me, when we talk about Franks, we're thinking of, well, what are you thinking about if I say the word Franks in Age of Empires?
Knights.
Exactly. Yeah, indeed. Well, their unique unit is far from a knight. Their unique units are the throwing axemen. They're based on this period in time. The Franks loved fighting with this kind of small throwing axe. They were even called the Francisca, which was just like iconic for them, that even other civilizations named it after them. And I don't know if you know how they used to fight with this kind of weapon.
If I base it on Age of Empires, it's they wield a big axe with two hands and they throw it at siege rams. But I suppose that's not how they fought the Romans.
Well, the Romans were already gone by the time it's after Clovis. But in this period, they didn't actually only throw this axe. So what they would do is, imagine a bit like a Woad Raiders kind of looking dudes. Lightly armored, big shield, wooden shield, and maybe a sword or something, right? So in those times, these two like infantry armies would kind of bash each other basically, right, with their shields and their swords. So what the Franks were famous for is they would get out these kind of small but heavy axes during the first charge when the enemies were about 10 meters away, and they would throw this axe with all their might at the first ranks. And it wasn't necessarily aimed to kill, it was actually meant to cleave and shatter the shields of the first line. Maybe the axe would get stuck in the shield, it would start to weigh it down, and then when they would draw their swords and they would fight like shield and sword, and the enemy would be at a disadvantage. So that's actually how they used to fight.
It actually resembles the Roman javelin then, because the Roman legionaries, they had a javelin which they threw. I'm not going to go into my Latin terminology, but they had, I think, palum or I'm not, but I might be using the entirely wrong word. But they did the same thing, and it was quite effective in the infantry encounters.
Maybe the Clovis got this inspiration from this. I mean, he was the man who defeated the last Roman. So
yeah.
So that's the origin of this unique unit. It's really something that came from the Dark Ages. You know?
Yeah. So actually, instead of from the castle, you should be able to make them in the Dark Age from your barracks, if it would be historically accurate.
Exactly. But then they would also throw it once and then become a man-at-arms or something. That would be so cool, no?
That their militia have like one ranged attack.
Yeah.
That would be cool, like a regen. Yeah, okay.
It gives negative modifiers to their armor, to their melee armor. Anywho, let's move on through history. So Clovis, this big man, the ruler, his descendants became the Merovingian kings. But even though they sound awesome, they were actually quite weak. That is until about middle of the 8th century, when there was a guy living at the palace, a bit the real ruler behind the throne, a man named Charles Martel. Now, he was the one that converted the Franks' army into a cavalry force. And he himself fought so well that he got the nickname Charles the Hammer. Their most famous battle was actually in north of Spain, where they beat the Muslim invaders that were coming from Spain and actually stopped the advance of Islam. Now, so as we said before, when we think of France, we think of cavalry. And this is actually where it all started, with Charles the Hammer. But we think of knights, right?
Yeah.
Well, at this time, the traditional chivalrous knight was not really yet a thing. That happened later. So after, when France became first an empire under Charles the Great, or Charlemagne, it actually descended into a bit of a chaotic period. There were all these kind of Viking raids, civil war, other wars, and the central government, let's say, the main ruler, the big man, was no longer able to keep control. So what happened was that there were all these little fragments of a kingdom. Like it broke up into smaller states. And actually that's where the knight that we think of comes from, because the government couldn't afford to keep an army of knights. It was too expensive. So instead, they would give someone a piece of land where they could have their serfs on it to work, and they would be the ruler of this little piece of land. And the entire system was designed so that the money would flow to this person that in exchange swore loyalty to the king.
Yeah. So that's feudalism.
And actually, it was necessary to pay for the knight's equipment and other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So do you know why it's so expensive, a knight? Like, what would make it so expensive? The unit we know in Age of Empires, why is it expensive in the real world? If you can translate that.
Like being a knight, why it's expensive? I suppose horses are expensive, armor is expensive. If you need a squire, retainers, I don't know.
Well, you kind of got it, yeah. It's the horse. It's very, very expensive. That's mainly because horses were working animals. They were used to plow the fields, all this kind of stuff, but not the war horse. The medieval war horse was actually bred and trained for war. So it was actually eating and doing training 99% of its life. And it costs a lot to feed a war horse because they give them additional food, not just grass in the field. For 99% of its life, it's basically eating, and you're paying and paying and paying. And then the 1% of its life where it's fighting, it might just die instantly. So it's all in all a very risky thing and a very expensive thing to have for a government to pay for. So that's why they had this whole system set up where you had all these little chivalrous knights with their own domain that was actually meant to pay for their horse and all their other equipment.
Quite ingenious, actually. Instead of like the system the Romans had with like a proper army, the system completely changed in a way because, based on the chaos that ensued, the fall of the bigger empires.
Well, in the same sense, if you go back to the Civ, to the Franks, so we see that the cavalry has increased hit points, which I think reflects the prominent role of the knights. But there's another bonus for knights that the Franks have, and I'm not talking about their unique tech. Do you know?
Not chivalry.
No, I'm not talking about chivalry.
Another bonus that they have, except for chivalry, they don't get Huzzah. That's not a.
It's specifically for the knights.
Huh?
Yes, I was also surprised.
Another bonus?
Yes.
Like a hidden bonus or something?
Nope.
Or something that's always there and we just don't notice?
They have a team bonus.
They have extra line of sight.
Exactly.
Is it something like this?
Their knights have +2 line of sight. And that's actually something I didn't really think about ever.
Now, it was a guess as well because I don't know the extra line of sight perks. I don't know them at all.
But actually, so I think that's actually genius because you would think that's so random, right? Why does a knight have extra line of sight? But actually, it makes perfect sense because the knights, they have their little strongholds everywhere throughout the landscape with their farmers around. So they actually had a great vantage point, a great viewing point. So the knights were very important in their mobility and also the fact that they could, quickly see if someone was approaching. So I think it's a genius bonus in a way.
Yeah. If that's the reason why they took it, because the knights took a prominent role in just maintaining like order and also,
and then for the other part of the Franks upgrades, the mill, they have farm upgrades and for free, and the foragers work faster. I think that reflects, as we said, the serfs, their strong feudalistic system, and also the great environment that they have, the
vineyards
for growing stuff. France is very rich in that sense.
Still today. I think if you just drive through France, you can see that it's like, well, Belgium is of course a big village, but they really have the rural agrarian landscapes, which are more rare in Western Europe these days, I think.
There was one period though, let's head back into the history. So one, we all know about one thing, that is the rivalry between France and England, right? Their long 100-year wars. Well, I think that's one of the reasons why we have the final bonus we haven't discussed yet for the Franks, and that is that their castles cost 25% less. So, as you can imagine, all these little kingdoms, this huge war, meant there was a need for a lot of fortification. So many fortresses and castles were built in this long era of war. Do you have any idea, like how many would you guess are there in France?
In France alone?
Just castles and fortresses. And I'm talking only from the medieval ages.
Yeah. I think almost every medieval main city had one, or at least every medieval city I visited, they had a ruin or a castle or something. And then I know during the 100-Year War, the borders were constantly moving, or not constantly, but
Mhm.
they moved a lot. So I suppose if you conquer a new area, you want to secure it.
That's how we do it in
yeah,
vampires.
yeah. So I think that would be the same for them. How many castles in total? France is big, right?
A rough guesstimate.
But I could say way too much as well. I would say, a small castle is also a castle, right? So
Yeah, like we even count like the smaller fortresses.
yeah, so I
We're
would
calling
say
we're
at least
counting everything.
1,000 maybe, or is that
That-
way overboard?
1,000.
Is that way
That's-
overboard?
No, I would say that's okay, but the real number is 40,000.
What the hell? That's at least.
And I think that's the origin of their bonus. Just the amazing amount of fortifications they've built in their long history of war.
Maybe that's why they have so much farms. They just don't have any rocks to build anything with because all the rocks are in the castles.
I think actually, for real, that the farmers would run into the castle or the chateau when there was enemies coming. So in a way, yeah, maybe that's true that they were more safe compared to other, more easily raidable farmers somewhere else.
Yeah.
So that's a bit all of the bonuses of the French explained. Now the unique tags are Bearded Axe. That's the throwing X-Men range increase. As we said before, they have their famous throwing X-Men from Clovis, the early Dark Ages. And the second one is Chivalry. Their stables work faster. Chivalry is, as we all know, the system of the tradition of the knight, how they behave in war, and the etiquette of the courts and all this kind of things. And of course, as we know, France was famous for that as well. So I think with that, we've touched upon a bit all of their bonuses and their link to the real life history. Do you have any other comments, Ben?
I thought it was interesting because the Franks, I know a bit of French history, but like when I hear your explanation, it only starts like the earliest I know is like after Clovis. It's more the Merovingian, how do you say it? Merovingian in English. And then, but then actually most of my knowledge is later medieval times. I had no idea, first of all, that they were like, what were they? Germanic tribe? And yeah, for me, the time of chivalry is the only, that's where it starts for me. So I thought it was, especially their early history is quite unknown to me. You said earlier that you had an anecdote with Franks versus Incas in the matchup when we were still on the notable news.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what that was about?
Yeah, right. Okay, so it was actually a massive 2 versus 2 versus 2 versus 2 land nomad game that I was playing, and I randomly got the Franks. My teammate and I, we were quite okay, but my teammate died very early on, and I couldn't help him, so I was a bit by myself.
You couldn't, or you wouldn't?
I tried. Okay. And the funny thing is, like, I went for the typical Franks paladins. They were like very strong, but then my opponents, this other enemy team that was kind of destroying me, they were the Incas, and they went for their unique unit.
Yeah.
So they have these long spear, strong units. They're slaughtering my cavalry. And then I decided I had a bunch of castles. I was really using that discount bonus. So I said, let's just go for the throwing X-Men. Let's go for it. And I built a ton of them. And I have to say, it was so fun. Like there was this like kind of waves of Inca soldiers coming at me. And I was like, with my throwing X-Men, keep like sniping them. And the guy just kept throwing army at me. And I was just kind of microing my throwing X-Men. And then, like you said before, the Incas, they have their slingers. So then they were adding slingers. So I added in scouts, and I was trying to like mix and match. And it was like insane how many units he threw into the slaughtering mill. And it came to the point where the other team... I just said to the other team, just leave me alone. I'm just going to help you defeat this team because they were annoying me. They were top score, and I just was like, no. So like it took so long, and I was building cheap castles and more throwing X-Men, and just kept throwing X's everywhere. And in the end, they just said, "Not fair, man. 3 versus 2. Q," and then they surrendered. And in the end, I had the highest kills. I think I killed 2,000 units or something ridiculous. I don't know exactly, but so that's why it's my story, Incas versus
Then you
Franks.
kept your word.
Exactly. I surrendered immediately after.
Yeah. That's something I would... depends a bit on how much I still want to play, but I would try to get my paladins into their eco while they're not looking, but that's more my style.
Look, I didn't know that when I surrendered, but when I did, I saw they had an amazing trade route set up, and they already had like so much gold, so I knew it was
That's why
impossible.
You need a teammate in a team game. That's very important. Yeah.
But it was just funny to think about the Incas and the French and how you shouldn't forget about those throwing X-Men when you're dealing with anti-cav units.
And then Incas, they counter everything as well with their own, funny matchup. Something you don't see too much. And I think while we were talking about history, I remember reading about the famous battle in which the French fought the Incas at Poitiers.
Yes, of course.
Very, very important battle there.
Yeah, that was...
On Arabia, yeah.
If not, we'll all be speaking... I don't know which language.
Commencez. The Incas, they weren't the most human sacrifice ones, right? Or where is it then?
Let's keep that for
the Inca
another
episode.
Civ of the Week episode.
Of the month, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Let's keep that for another Civ of the Month episode, Ben.
We'll have to read up on that.
Yes.
Okay, so I think that concludes our third and last segment of the podcast. What do you think about this first episode? Are you happy with what we've achieved so far?
I had a lot of fun, at least.
Yeah.
I hope that the listener has the same. I really would like some input and some feedback. We've thought about the different segments we wanted to do for a while. And even though this one has a bit of a longer notable news section, because of the patch, I think it's a fun format. So please give us your input. We have a Discord, which we'll post in the description. You can join there and give us feedback directly. We're always there, basically. Otherwise, we're going to publish the podcast on Spotify, right? And share it on our usual channels.
Yeah, for sure. And just what you said, we've debated a bit about what we wanted to do. I think we tend to go in length on these subjects, which personally, that's our style and that's what we want to do. But considering we do a lot of things right now for our main podcast, it might be long for some listeners. So if people think it's too long, they want some things more separate, maybe we can do the patch updates and separate dedicated episodes or something, and we just focus more on the talk of the show. Then let us know. If you don't mind a big lengthy chunk of content to chew on for the rest of the month, then our current formula might be the best thing. But yeah, we're just working on our show. We want to improve. We want to hear your feedback. So don't keep it to yourself.
Yeah, indeed.
For our next episode, don't think we have much to reveal already. However, I can already give you one scoop, let's say. I think in the notable news, I might be talking about a casual tournament that's going on.
Ooh.
Yeah, the Wheel of Misfortune. I've registered as a participant there, and I'm really looking forward to what's going to go on for me in January. So while the pros are playing the T90 Titans League, I will be playing a tournament called Wheel of Misfortune, and it's called like that because you don't know which map you will play on in advance. But that's something I might talk more about next episode then.
Yeah, we'll love to hear your first-person view of how it went and the settings. It's very interesting.
Right. hope I don't get defeated in the first round. But yeah, we'll see.
Of course not, Pen. Of course not. That never happens,
Sure.
right?
No.
So I think that's where we leave our listeners, right?
Yes.
I think there's not much left to say. This is our adieu. Goodbye, listener. Hopefully we'll see you next time.
Adieu.
Thank you for listening.